everyone. Welcome to our Board of Education meeting. Begin with the pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm not doing next Tuesday night. Okay, we'll begin as we always do. Thank goodness we have a routine here with our administrative remarks, and that would be Ms. Cullen.
Good evening. I would like to reserve my comments for executive session.
Oh, darn. Okay. I'll find somebody. I know.
Dr. Jambour.
Hi, Ms. Goss. How are the politics doing?
If it's all right, I would like to withhold my comments as well.
Great. Okay. And I know that Mr. Carlson's away.
I'm going to hold my comments as well, Dr. Jambour.
I think we're all holding our breath. Okay. And, I guess I'm next. Well, look, I don't want to stand out and look different, so I'm going to hold my comments also. Our student representative?
Graduated.
That does happen. We have the toughest time holding on to bright students. They're college.
They do.
Okay. So I guess we're moving down to presentations, recognition, and discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
The first agenda item is a recognition of our PTA, PTSA leadership and SEPTA leadership. So could you kindly come up, please, to let's see, where shall we embarrassingly place you? Right here. Come on up. Yes, and applause. There's not enough thank yous that we can give you for all of the amazing work and all of your dedication to the children of the Brewster Central School District. So what we're doing tonight is just a token of our appreciation. It'll start with a certificate that you have to laminate in rolls and frame. And it basically reads, presented to the Brewster Central School District Certificate of Appreciation presented to SEPTA in recognition of your tireless dedication to the children of Brewster schools. Thank you, Mr. Starr.
Thank you very much.
And another certificate, we couldn't get more creative, so it says Brewster Certificate of Appreciation, presented to the John F. Kennedy PTA in recognition of your tireless dedication to the children of John F. Kennedy Elementary. Brewster Central School District Certificate of Appreciation presented to the Brewster High School PTSA in recognition of your tireless dedication to the students of Brewster High School. Mrs. Yoni, thank you. Brewster Central School District Certificate of Appreciation presented to the CD Star Intermediate and H.H. Wells Middle School PTA in recognition of your tireless dedication to the children of CD Star and H.H. Wells. Thank you, Mrs. Gololeski. We've asked the building leadership team to put together some additional tokens of appreciation. So they're going to come up. We're going to start with, let's see, JFK Elementary School. If you're, could you please bring your tokens of appreciation up?
And a live hard.
Tokens of appreciation up. You get some students. Thank you. Look at that. And could the Brewster High School team Dr. Young, bring up the Tiffany vase.
tell you about it, I'm sorry. So this is it, and I want to show everyone, and I'd like to read what that is that was made, handmade for you. It's a piece of pottery made by Mary Ann Droche and Anthony Salmon. And you see that? It's the pieces of pottery were made in cultures and clay and ceramics and sculpture. And it's an early project to learn hand building skills, and the pieces reference both Greek and Roman pottery. I'm sorry, Steve, you're listening to part of British. As well as the San Ildefonso Pueblo pottery of New Mexico. And they chose succulents to complement the pieces. So I think that's
is coming. So on behalf again of all the students and all the educators and everyone who benefits from all of your hard work and dedication, thank you so much for all that you do for the children of the Central School District. And you get to shake all your hands. And the next recognition has to do with a couple of esteemed members of our Board of Education. We'll start with Mrs. Mary Kay Nielsen, who has served on the Board of Education for 3 years, and she has been a tireless advocate for all children, all staff, all programs, and there is not enough accolades to say to show our appreciation for you, Mary Kay. But we'll start with a couple of items. With a plaque presented to Mary Kay Nielsen, 2015-2018, in appreciation of the devotion and service to the children of the Brewster Central School District as a board trustee, Brewster Board of Education, June 2018. That's one of your wonderful items. The second is a certificate from the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association in honor, in recognition of Mary Kay Nielsen, whose support of public education, commitment to educational excellence, and dedicated leadership have enhanced the quality of education for all students in the district. And a little something from the administrators, and on behalf of you, who has a few words to say to you in this book. And we also made a donation to the Putnam Community Action Partnership in your honor for all of your work and a few other tributes. Let's see here. Let's read a couple of proclamations. Proclamation from our Senator Terrence Murphy. Proclamation from our Assemblyman Kevin Byrne. And we actually have Mrs. Odell who's coming. And then we have Mr. Frank Snickler from the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, who would like to say a few things as well.
Sure.
But I'll just read one of these for you.
Okay.
Honoring Dr. Stephen Jambor upon his retirement from the Brewster Central School District Board of Education. Whereas the Senate of New York is proud to acknowledge the outstanding community service of the esteemed citizens
And whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor is honored upon his well-deserved retirement from the Brewster Central School District Board of Education during its regular meeting to be held in the district office on June 26, 2018. And whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Educational Psychology and a professional diploma of counselor, education, school counseling, and guidance services from Fordham University. He also completed an Education Policy Fellowship Program at Columbia University. Whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor joined the Brewster Central School District Board of Education in 2000. And whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor has served as president of the Board of Education since 2006. And whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor has served as adjunct school board retreat facilitator for the New York State School Boards Association since July 2014. And whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor has served as president of the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association since June 2015. And whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor has been a tremendous asset to the Brewster Central School District, a strong advocate for its students, and an inspiration to his fellow Board of Education members, now therefore be it resolved that I, Dr. Terrence Murphy, as a duly elected member of the Senate of the State of New York, on behalf of the citizens thereof, do hereby congratulate Dr. Stephen Jambor upon his well-deserved retirement from the Brewster Central School District Board of Education, and to thank him for his many years of dedicated service. This one is from Assemblyman Byrne. Whereas the state of New York is proud to acknowledge its esteemed public servants who have distinguished themselves in their community, and whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor served on the Board of Education for 18 years, including 12 as president, and whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor became president of the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, there's a theme here from your LinkedIn account. Whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor received his doctorate in educational philosophy in 1978, and whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor brought nearly 40 years of experience and service to the Brewster Board of Education, having been a state licensed psychologist, and whereas Dr. Stephen Jambor has inspired many others through his extraordinary dedication to his community, therefore be it resolved in view of the outstanding achievements of Dr. Stephen Jambor, I, Kevin Byrne, New York State Assembly Member, 94th District, by the power and authority vested in me, this 26th day of June 2018, join in honoring Dr. Stephen Jambor as a truly outstanding individual and wish him well in his retirement. And a plaque presented to you, Dr. Stephen O. Jambor, in appreciation of your leadership, devotion, and service to the children of the Brewster Central School District as a president of the Board of Education for 12 years, Brewster Board of Education. Tomorrow morning, we'll have to come back to the board room, and we have something else there for you.
Okay.
Um,
Hi, Frank. Welcome.
My name is Pete Mondo, distinguished members of the board. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I'd like to open my comments. My name is Frank Schnecker. I'm on the board of directors of the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association. I serve on the board of Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, and I serve on the Austin Community School District Board. And I'd like to open my comments tonight and just to thank my colleague Mary Kay Nielsen for her service to Brewster and to service to Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. As was mentioned tonight, Mary Kay is an unwavering advocate for the success of all students. I've had the pleasure of seeing Mary Kay at work several times, interacting with students and staff and faculty, and she is a solutions person. She's very innovative in her thinking, and she really brings great things to our board. So I would just like to thank Mary Kay for your service, and I'm grateful to still be serving with you. I'd like to congratulate state, and I attend a lot of events, and there's school board events, and there's superintendent events, and they're not always the most, they don't draw the biggest crowds, but I have to tell you, the Brewster community is always really well represented. I've seen your superintendent and your board members and your staff present many different areas of really visionary things that we all aspire to do. So I just want to congratulate you and thank you for your stewardship of this school district. I think you're a real beacon for a lot of us in the state. I'd like to kind of conclude my comments just to talk about Westchester Putnam School Boards Association. We have a long history of advocacy for public education, and for the past several years, Dr. Stephen Jambor has been at the forefront of that. And perhaps what might have been the most difficult time for public schools financially in generations, Steve led our regional efforts on many fronts. One, importantly, was funding. Steve was at the forefront of eliminating gap elimination and getting more foundation aid for our region and the state. Those had real results. They resulted in millions of dollars for districts like Ossining and Brewster, and they were billions of dollars statewide. Without people standing at the forefront of those issues, I don't know that outcome would have been the same. Probably more importantly, though, Steve has really stood out in the areas of student mental health and well-being. And there's so many different areas he's done that. He's led groups throughout Westchester and Putnam. And he also really brought, I think, the opioid crisis to everyone's forefront of their conscience before really everybody else was talking to it. So I just wanted to thank him for his efforts. I'm here tonight with a certificate from the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association. We're pleased and honored to recognize Dr. Stephen Jambor. We thank you for your dedicated service on the Westchester Putnam Board of Directors and as our president. You have served with passion and humor. Your commitment to public education, legislative advocacy, professional development, and to our organization and its mission will always be appreciated. Congratulations on your retirement, Steve. Well done. Thank you.
There's not very much I can say. It's phenomenal. I can say this, though. I didn't get here by myself. I think I had a terrific supporting cast. And I would like to give recognition where recognition is due in this little sequence that I call Building Brewster's Central Schools Together the past 18 years. Once upon a time, in the beginning, we all, and all the kids, and the staff, and whomever, we all fit in that little schoolhouse up there on the hill. We don't fit in that anymore. You guys will be happy to hear that. But once upon a time, first grade through 12th grade, and you graduated right from there. And I am here to dispel a myth tonight. Monica and Bertie were not there in the first year. So what did we do? Well, we had to create more space for ourselves. And fortunately, in the school year 99-2000, a crazy bunch of dedicated people got together and called themselves the Citizens Advisory Committee, and they studied, and they walked the walk, and they went to every corner of our campuses to decide what we needed to do to get bigger. We put our plans together. We were very, very ambitious, and I wasn't on the board at the time. I was on this committee. So I was allowed to dream very big. And we came up with a $40 million proposal, which was outrageous. And the board kind of let us know that in no uncertain terms. And we brought it down to $24 million, which still was enough for us to call that the big bond. And the crown jewel of the big bond was your Performing Arts Center. And then we knew from the very, very beginning that we'd watched schools all over the country perform. And we asked, well, what gets them together? What gets their kids so enervated and involved? And the answer was very simple. Music. We found a distinct and noticeable correlation across the country between music and the arts and academic performance. So we brought that home with us. That's where your Performing to build a science and math wing. And from the very beginning, we were creating balance, opportunities for all of our students. At the time, and in that first big bond, we built the first all-weather track. It was replaced thereafter. How many of you remember walking or running on the old cinder track? Oh, great, good, so I don't feel so old. Yeah, well, there was an old cinder track out there, and it was replaced not once, but twice, thanks to you. And then came along phase 2. Now, we wanted $40 million of improvements right away in that first big bond, and the board kind of calmed us down, and it went down to $24 million. So the rest came back a few years later in what was called the second big bond. Wells was involved, and my wife Susan will appreciate this. We knocked out the back wall of Wells, and we created vistas. You could see forevermore, looking out the back side of Wells. You can see the mountains. We never could see those mountains before. And you can see gardens planted on the top of the roof. And oh, by the way, the design of Wells won the American Institute of Architects Award that year. Along with the improvements that we made to Wells in that bond were the Fields of Dreams, fields plural. Now, the Fields of Dreams, one slide, it didn't happen quite that fast. It took us actually 6 very long years. And the moral of that story is this. If you're going to build something significant here, be prepared to be in it for the long haul. 6 years is a long time. And frankly, we almost gave up a couple of times. But thank goodness, thank God, thank whomever, for CV Star. There's a major footnote in a lot of the success in the building that we did. That plaque out there, right behind the concession stand. There is the concession stand. And that wasn't easy either. In fact, there was a myth that it was in the first big bond. It never was in the first big bond, but for sure it came back in the second one. Persistence. Now, I've talked about up till now the mortar and the bricks and the infrastructure. At the very, very same time, and in no particular place and in no particular building, we introduced something called the Strategic Coherence Plan. Brewster, like so many school districts, has a lot of good things happening in each and every building. And the staff pretty much knows what they're doing. They are experts. They are the ones upon which we've built so much. What we were still missing, though, was a way of bringing it all together. The Strategic Coherence Plan did exactly that, and is continuing to do that. It provides the rhyme and the reason and the cohesion for all that we do. And look what you see up there now. In the 4 C's, you see the updated version of the old 3 R's. We're still concerned with reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we're also interested in the character, the person, the heart of the matter. That stands on equal footing in Brewster. And then the last big bond was JFK and all that went with it. And again, you see this concept here. Looking through those back windows, which can come up on a clear day, the children have quite a far horizon for their activities. And in the room, you can't see it in the photo, you have all of those interactive boards, okay, where the students work in groups, not in rows and columns anymore. It's a much more exciting learning environment. Playground? Oh, yes. $1 million. $1 million. Can you guess what this photo is of? What is it? It is kind of CV Star. Yeah, try it again.
It's the pond right outside.
Oh, you're almost there. This is the Brewster Water Park. You didn't know that? We had to do that because there's a little animal out there that's basically becoming extinct unless we did something serious to save it. Not really, but that's what they told us. So the box turtle is safe, the bog turtle is safe, and we have the Brewster Water Park, and only a few people know about it. Where we won't have secret. But to a more serious note, I'll give you a chance to get back in the ballgame. What is this? It says right up there. It's the water purification system. I know it's not as exciting as the Field of Dreams, but it's an accomplishment. We are dedicated green. We are a green district. We're dedicated to preserving green. Now, to be honest, we're not done yet. Okay, so this is a very embarrassing photograph of the girls' softball field. It's not going to happen on my watch. But I put it up there tonight to kind of put an idea in your head that the place we want to go. And if you're interested, check out the Brewster Sports Foundation. They do great work. Oh, the boys' baseball field is also in bad shape. Such bad shape that yesterday afternoon I sent a photographer out there to take a picture of dead center field. I haven't heard from him. Now, also, for anybody who's paying attention, this picture is very significant. There's 60-plus acres up in the back. I'm not saying you have to do anything with them right away, but kind of tuck the idea away and maybe come back to it sometime. I think a natatorium, that's what people call swimming competitions, would fit in lovely there. So our focus is always ask yourself, what are we doing now, and how is it really helping kids? And there are always going to be rewards, and they're not just the physical kind, the shiny kind that you hang up in a trophy case. The deepest rewards that we've gotten so far are generation upon generation of very, very well-rounded learners. Thank you. While taking none of the authority away from anyone to make these decisions, I do need a place to hand this off. And the most logical that I can think of as of midnight tonight. All right, folks, thank you again so much. Okay.
Ms. Ash. As you know, through the efforts of Mr. Victor Carlson and Ms. Kathy Ash, the district was awarded a Chef Ann grant, which allowed us to not only upgrade facilities, but also look at our food options. It resulted in an upgraded name change and other innovations. So Ms. Ash is going to give us an update on the efforts underway with the use of the Chef Ann grant. So thank you, Ms. Ash.
Wait for my slides. In February of 2017, Brewster was selected as one of 6 school districts across the country to participate in a school food support initiative sponsored by Lifetime Foundation, the Chef Ann's Foundation, and Whole Kids Foundation. This grant is for school districts who want to transition their food service operations from eat and serve processed foods to whole foods that are cooked from scratch. We completed your work. We started with a rebrand. With the support of the district, we changed our name from Food Services to Child Nutrition Services. Our Department of Child Nutrition Services promotes healthy lifestyles that allow every child to thrive academically. Our first focus was on introducing new breakfast items. Wellness Wednesday breakfast featured yogurt parfaits, top your oatmeal, ham and cheese bread, and breakfast burrito. looking to replace those Pop-Tarts. Was one of our breakfast meals during the breakfast week. One of our goals was to reduce the sugar. The first action was to remove chocolate milk from breakfast and juice from the lunch meals, except for on Fridays. Each cafeteria now serves fruit-infused water as a beverage at no charge to the students. This has become very popular. For our advocacy, we were able to secure a $50,000 in assistance grant from Lifetime Foundation for the benefit of our students. Their mission is to improve the health of children through clean eating. Clean eating is a way to remove unhealthy substances such as high fructose corn syrup from the diets and to replace it with whole and wholesome foods. Those are our harmful 7. High fructose corn syrup, artificial colors, artificial sweeteners, artificial preservatives, trans fats, hormones and antibiotics, and bleach alcohol. So the process was we began our monthly conference calls with our partners from Lifetime Foundation. The first step was to review our pantry. We retrieved labels of items purchased. We mapped the inventory, which we shared with our partners at Lifetime Foundation, built a recommended product substitute list. Prior to making changes, 45% of our food items contained at least one of the 7 harmful ingredients. We now have lowered that number of items to 39%. We're making change slowly and deliberately to evaluate the acceptance of our change. In November 2017, we installed new hardware and cloud-based software system, new terminals and pin pads for our point-of-sale system, food production, ordering, receiving, inventory systems, and we purchased a tilt kettle, which is a 6-foot frying pan. It allows us to prepare different menu items, stir fries, and things you do in a fry pan. In 2018-19, we'll use our professional development days for in-service training for cooks and food service helpers. Topics to include new menu item preparation, review of HACCP, written plan that defines procedures for maintaining control of hazardous foods at critical points. If you're cooking from scratch, that's critical. Standard operating procedures, orders, receiving, cooking, holding temps, hand washing, personal hygiene, etc. And procedures on managing meal charges using the NYSED webinar prohibition against meal shaking. Our wellness teams have met on building level as well as district-wide. We meet quarterly. Each building focused on the importance of eating a healthy breakfast. The teams celebrated with creating recipes, tasting new fruits and vegetables with the help of the PTA, thank you. Information bulletin boards and newsletters. Great exercise. Next year's team will focus on exercise and learning.
Any questions for Mrs. Ash?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops.
Yeah, go ahead first. Is the wellness, the trying to reduce the sugar and that kind of stuff, is that part of not serving waffles or pancakes for lunch anymore?
Do you want me to serve waffles or don't want me to serve waffles? How can we just be not serve like waffles? Waffles, not waffles, something to serve. Thank you for the suggestion.
We're at 39%. Is there a timeline to reduce?
The program, our commitment was a 5-year period.
Okay.
So that's what I shoot for.
Thank you, Mrs. Ash.
You're welcome.
County Executive Odell. Don't even get comfortable. I know you were busy, and thank you so much for coming. I know you wanted to say a few words for Dr. Jambor, so you want to take the podium?
Go, go, that's cool, right? Yes, thank you so very much. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Jambor. Tonight, Putnam County says good luck and congratulations with much gratitude and heartfelt to you. And we know that volunteering in Putnam County is paramount to the successes that we've been able to accomplish as a county, which is why this year, 2018, I declared it to be the year of the volunteer. Not knowing that you would take full advantage of it and make sure that we recognize you as one of our esteemed volunteers. Your leadership in our county has been respected by so many educators and families and children and parents, you know. It's hard enough, as we all know, every day to face the challenges of parenting and working and juggling and trying to do the best we can. But when someone steps up and takes on a heavy lift, such as yourself and all of your esteemed colleagues, Mary Kay, I know you too as well, have taken on that challenge and the heavy lift, and you have big shoulders, and you've done it with such class and such dignity, and I've admired it so much in my 7 years as the county executive that I had to come by tonight and make sure that you know, with a grateful heart, we appreciate everything that you've done, certainly for the Brewster School District, but you know it's that pebble in the pond. What you have dropped in there has really resounded through many, many shores, through all the four corners of this county, because we know that the children, once they leave this, you know, environment, this academic, high school spirit environment, they go on to bigger and better things. And your guidance and your leadership and your fortitude, but mostly, I believe, your integrity and compassion has gone on with them for generations to come. So on behalf of the people of Putnam County, I have a special edition bicentennial book that was published. Certainly, this esteemed school district is included in many of the pages of this book. And I give it to you on behalf of the people of Putnam County. And I have inscribed a little note in here for you, something between myself, my desk, and whatever desk you decide to set up on. But know that we send you off with love and, again, gratitude, that word gratitude, that we should all be embracing each and every day. And I certainly know that you have done that. So Dr. Jambor, please accept this.
Concern that we all share for what's going on with children today. So July 1st, the legislature is rolling out the mental health care mandate. We're thrilled. And I've heard from some people along the grapevine, there's money in it if we can partner and write the right grant.
That's wonderful.
So we're going to talk some more.
Thank you, thank you. And you know, the last time I was here was to talk about that issue, but also the impact of the opioid crisis on us as a community and the students. And I think if you're following in the news lately, there was a really groundbreaking decision where the motion to dismiss was tossed. So we're still in the game. Our feet are firmly planted, and we are going to make sure that Big Pharma is held accountable for what they have done to really devastate communities and lives and families. So we're doing it together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mrs. Odell, for coming. We have a few more items for you. So we'll start with JFK Elementary School.
Children did the best drawings they could.
That's terrific.
And even included beards.
CD Star, Mrs. Cherry, and team. There's a very serious one in the middle.
Wow. Solo signature, eh?
On behalf of the students and staff, we would like to present you with this poster.
Mr. Clark? H.H. Wells?
So from one quarter Moran to another.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Thank you again.
This is a drawing that was drawn by one of our students. Well, board. Yep, pencil drawing. At first look, it's a desert scene, so it looks kind of barren, but if you notice in the background, there's a flower, which kind of represents hope. So,
Absolutely.
I wanted to present that to you.
Thank you.
Dr. White from the high school.
With my memory, of course.
I just have to say a few words because we've been working together a long time. We're almost the same. So it's a little different if you'd like to show everyone what's in there.
Sure, thank you.
And I'd just like to say a little bit about what Steve has done in all these years.
Thank you.
So, obviously you've been on the board 18 years, and I calculated, and I tried to figure out how many hours does that equate to. And I think it's probably between 1,500 and 2,500, including the board meeting and everything else, and it might be an underestimation. So how do you thank someone for gifting us with the most precious and non-replenishable commodity, time? And you've dedicated your professional and leisurely selves to make a difference in the lives of others. We've always strived to make things better for our children, never being satisfied with good being good enough. Steve, I'm going to use your own words to demonstrate this. When running for re-election in 2012, this is what you said. Ready? You forgot, right? I'm seeking re-election in order to have the opportunity to continue the work that we have started here during the 12 years I have been in office. While there's evidence that a lot has been accomplished on behalf of our students and the parents community that we serve, there are still challenges ahead. These are, in fact, precarious times for schools to navigate. And you always knew that, and you always kept our compass in the right direction as a student. And I didn't know you were doing the PowerPoint. You stole my thunder because, just a little bit, but I'll go on anyway. Under your leadership, just a few things: the evolution of the academic, social, and emotional programs, the renovations and expansions on 4 schools. We now have a track, a new turf, a concession stand, and the music and performing arts programs enhancement. And more recently, our strategic coherence plan, putting the emphasis on the enduring personal qualities of our students that they can carry on, that go beyond that grade every day. Thank you for your gracious and articulate leadership, and enjoy all of your newly earned minutes, probably using them to hike in Vermont. And Steve has a cup in his office. You still have that cup? It's still in one piece?
Sure is.
Excellent. And on it says, "Children are my business." And we've all benefited by you living with that mantra. Is there another one?
Oh, I hope.
Yes. Mrs. Kennedy?
So on behalf of the UPS department, we are
Sure.
most grateful for all of your leadership and everything you've done for our students with special needs,
Yep.
and also from one quarter grant to another. We have made a donation for the university in your honor, and
Thank
also
you.
to the Council for Exceptional Children.
Wow. That's okay.
All right.
I want to get back to Dover, right?
Enough on you. We're going to shift the focus to the International Baccalaureate Feasibility Study update, Ms. Gosh, and the feasibility team.
Okay, good. Very good.
Mr. Stevens, you want to stay here behind me?
Okay, good evening. We would like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss some work that we have been engaged in since last winter and spring in regards to our International Baccalaureate Diploma Program feasibility study.
I'd like to thank the dedicated members of the FST, or Feasibility Study Team, who came back on the second day of vacation to present to you, and I'll introduce them in a moment. Throughout our numerous meetings and site visits, we have immersed ourselves in IB. We've seen it in action in other settings, and we've had intense and what I consider fruitful discussions about what kind of value added this could bring to Brewster High School and really where we want to go as a district. I want to say loud and clear from the start, this is not about a deficit model. This is not about pointing out things that are wrong in any particular place and trying to fix them. We love Brewster High School. I taught there, and we're proud of what we offer students. This is about us as practicing professionals taking stock of where we are and really evaluating how we can continue to improve the experience for students. So we gave an overview of the feasibility study last fall, and of course tonight we're here to share our findings with you with the recommendation that we move forward into the next phase. And just to be clear, moving forward into the next phase does not mean we're automatically an IB school. It's a multi-year process with internal and external checks that we will be hopefully engaging in. And just speaking for myself from a leadership perspective, what this next phase would be is really a strategic planning process. So we know we have the SCP, we know we have these 21st century skills, but what does that vision look like at Brewster High School, and how do we operationalize that? And we see IB as one piece to that, but really, to me, the value will be in us sitting down in larger groups, even more people than we had on the feasibility study, and really talking about what do we want our experience to look like for kids? What type of curriculum, instruction, and assessment do we want students to experience on a daily basis? All students, not just students who may be in the top 10. So through that lens, we will begin. What I'll do after introductions is to give a brief overview for those of you who are unable to be here in the fall when we talk a little bit about IB. We'll talk about our role as a feasibility study team. We'll give some qualitative feedback as to why we'd like to continue with the process. And in that, it's kind of the organic outcome of this was a philosophy statement that we constructed as a group as to what we would want this to look like in terms of how we approach it and what the implementation would be. We will explain some potential course offerings, and of course, we will talk about what this will cost us over the next several years. So I'd like to introduce the members that are here tonight: Mr. Antonio Franze, Ms. Andrea Perdico, Mr. Tom Mullane, school counselor, Ms. Beth Jones, everybody, right? That's it. Other members that I would like to thank: Nicole Sullivan, Laura Bald, Jamie Flanagan, although I still like to call her Jimmy Nooner, Tracy Villaverdi, Janet Levy, and we had also 3 parent representatives, Denise Galgano, Melissa Stahl-Downey, and Jennifer Mulvihill, who endorsed this presentation, who have seen it and said, yes, put my name to it. And Nikki Horler, who is principal of Brewster High School, who's on a very well-deserved vacation, also has been instrumental in this. So, although we gave a brief overview in the fall, Mrs. Jones will give you some information on the IB diploma program.
A couple of points I want to make. Obviously, there's bullet points up on the screen, but I think the growth in the IB program is sort of significant to mention. Noticed on the bottom there, between 2012 and 2017, the number of IB programs offered worldwide has grown by almost 40%. I had the opportunity to speak to the coordinator at Somers High School along with one of their counselors just a couple of weeks ago, and they're in their very first year of implementing the program. So, of course, the question that came to my mind was, well, so what does next year look like? And they have double the amount of students that are taking IB classes, well beyond what their expectations were. So I think that gives some perspective to how well received the program can be. The rest of it, again, I think it's important to also note that we're not taking anything away, but we're adding things, and also adding things that are completely different than what we have at the moment.
So,
How IB approaches 21st century challenges. What we must applaud is that IB, the IB program, deals with the challenges that our students are facing head-on. Inequality, diversity, complexity, rigor within the courses, and globalization. This international education that our students would receive would foster an intercultural understanding through curriculum, design, and instruction, and always cherish and promote our successes here at Brewster, such as service, which is a very big one that we hold dear to our hearts. We're looking for two types of communication, in my opinion. One with it amongst the students, of course, but really one from the teachers down to the students through curriculum design, which will promote diversity, continue to promote diversity. We must focus on cultural components. We do not want our students to have a view of the world just as an American, but as a global citizen. And we really feel that IB will promote these skills that are aligned with the 21st century challenges, but also enhance them quite a bit.
So there's two different things that kids can basically do. They can take the diploma itself, which is pretty comprehensive. There's a lot of work that goes into that. But only a small number of kids would actually do that. The vast majority of students that are in this program, and the way that we would expect to measure our success, would be how many are enrolled in classes in general. And something else that I'll point out would be that as teachers go for training, this has been a rehashed thing amongst many teachers that we've talked to at the schools we visited. The training has a tendency to bleed into other things, which is good. So a teacher that goes for this training, if they're not teaching an IB course, if they're teaching a special ed co-taught course and teaching any of these others, STEM courses, literature, whatever, a lot of the pedagogy and the techniques that they use are going to wind up being used in those classes too. And it's pretty high return. You see from the offerings here that the kids have a lot of choices. They wouldn't get all of them right away, but this is a pretty long-term process that we're going through. So like you'd see people prune offerings or add them on as circumstances would dictate. And yeah, like there's an a la carte aspect to this, and there's a lot more involved in terms of courses working together on different things. No, it's just,
It can be hard to get the mic back from Mr. Mullane. So in terms of, so that's IB big picture. If we think about what we have done as a feasibility study team, Beth will get into more detail about that, but we really focused our work around two essential questions. We know that we serve in an advisory role to you and to the superintendent, but at first we wanted to look at to what extent the IB diploma program provides a structure for these 21st century skills that we want to embed into our curriculum instruction, assessment, professional learning, and learning environment. And the second bullet, to what extent is there alignment and synergy between our profile of a graduate and the IB learner profile? And just to speak to that for a minute, we were sort of blown away when we sat down. We had different color highlighters to see where the similarities and differences were. And we were pretty pleased to see that there's complete synergy with what we want in terms of these outcomes. And actually, we had a pretty good conversation about how some of what was in the IB Learner profile actually enhances what we saw in our profile of a graduate. So that was important to us in our foundational work as a feasibility study team.
So as Michelle mentioned, we started quite a number of months ago, and met as a group and shared ideas, concerns, thoughts, and what we knew and didn't know about the IB process, and developed some basic sort of philosophy statements. We were fortunate enough to have not one but two school visits. The first school we went to was Clarkstown South, and they provided us with a full day of experiencing the student's perspective, the curriculum, the faculty perspective, the administrative perspective. So it was really wonderful. And it was great because we did it early on, and then we had time to kind of digest that and ask further questions. The second visit was to Somers High School, and it was a similar experience in that we got to hear from everybody's different perspective, and some mistakes they made, and also the support of the IB program itself, which personally I found very interesting. And we've since met since the Somers visit to just kind of take away from that, some of the important things and how it has looked. And the fact that this was Somer's first year, they could really sort of share with us some growing pains and that kind of thing. So there were two great opportunities for us to, see this program in action. I'm going to also speak as a guidance counselor about our current instructional program, which is very rich and offers many students. I think one of the things about the IB program that the more you learn about it, the more you realize that it's for many different students. And I have to be honest, when I first went into it, I was wondering, how is this going to help a broader range of students than maybe honors classes or AP classes, and I'm sure our teachers can speak about that. Because one, it is an a la carte sort of a thing. You can take something that you're really, really interested in and learn about it. And it also, it isn't just, remembering data and learning things so you can get a nice 4 or 5 on the AP exam. It's about learning. It's about knowledge acquisition. So I think that, the important point of this slide is that we're not going to change any of this. We're just going to enhance it, and I think it would really enhance the depth of our curriculum. And just for those of you that don't know, we do have 15 AP classes. The dual enrollment classes are classes where students are attending Brewster High School, but they're getting credit from either Syracuse University, those are the SUPA classes, Westchester Community College, or Dutchess Community College. And then we also have our relatively new Project Lead the Way, STEM, honors, and advanced selections. One of the things I did want to mention from the counseling standpoint is since beginning this feasibility study, we meet with college reps all the time. We have well over 100 colleges that come to the college career room and meet with our students. And so I've been asking them, one, how does it look on a transcript? And, got very positive feedback. But one theme that I noticed from a number of them was because one of the things that colleges really look at is college retention. Students that stay and are successful at the school, that's a really key thing that colleges spend a lot of time studying. And many, many reps mentioned that they felt that had helped their retention rate because these students were really having a college experience with the benefit of the support of a high school. So it was really kind of profound, I thought, that the number of reps that made mention of that.
We wanted to include this slide just to show some of the things going on in the district, not to say that, again, that IB is the quick fix for anything, right? But this is one piece of a larger puzzle from a K-12 spectrum that helps us prepare the world, prepare students for the post-high school world, and really to embed those 21st century skills, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and so on and so on.
So the more we looked at the IB stuff, the more I realized that I've seen this before. I see it all the time because I've run Model United Nations for 10 years. And if you take that student who's gone through that program, who's participated in debate, who's negotiated, you see that you wind up with students that are better thinkers, better writers, better speakers. And I think that those are the skills that are going to make a difference when these students get out of this district. And that they would love to be proud of. But this is a huge enhancement to what we have to offer. And the idea that I'd be able to provide students with the kind of experiences that my students have in an extracurricular, but embedded in all sorts of classes is really exciting. So this is really, we looked through this and it was really solid.
Hi. I'm going to come at it a little bit from a parent perspective because as I sat in these committee meetings and went to the different schools, and talk to the students and listen to what they had to say. I'm always kind of filtering everything that I'm learning as a teacher and how can I help you be a better teacher to my own students, but also how can I help my child learn. And I was very excited by this process. One of the things one of the teachers said was that an AP learner would do very well in an IB class, but not necessarily an IB learner would do well in an AP class. AP tends to be memorizing a lot of knowledge. And my feeling was that IB really fostered the internal curiosity of an individual child. You know, my child is not someone that's going to do well in an AP class. It takes her 2 or 3 hours to get her homework done in the 6th grade. And I know that she works extremely hard. But as we walk through these different classes and talk to these different students, I was so impressed with every kind of student and what they got out of their classes, which was this love of learning. And we talk about that like it's just something you can throw away and it's going to happen because we love what we teach. And that doesn't always happen. This is really geared toward having kids delve into what they're interested in, and what they're interested in fosters other interests and spreads out through the rest of their learning. So I was really excited by that. And I see that in my own students. I don't teach what they teach here. I have every kind of student in my band. I have every kind of student in my theater class. I've taught choir, and I have those upper level kids, and I have the middle kids, and I have the lower kids. And I can see every kind of kid getting something out of this, whether they go through the diploma program or they choose to just do 1 or 2 of the classes. Anything that gets kids excited about learning, I am on board with. So the next thing with this slide is how I think it could better our school. I've been teaching at Brewster right back from the beginning of that bond. When you put that slide up there, I thought, that was me. Dr. Lewis brought me here from upstate New York. And we started this new adventure. And as we started to build this performing arts program, there were people that were on board, and there were people that thought, Brewster's about sports, and this is all we're about, and how could music help? And I've been, in every class I've taken, in every, anything we've been brought into the high school where we've had to bring things from the state, and now we're doing this, and now we're doing SCP, and I'm always filtering that through how it's going to help me in the classroom. I teach the performing arts. How is that going to help me? Without a doubt, in the most busiest time of the year, this focused me as a teacher more than I've been focused in the last 10 years. It excited me, it inspired me. I really do think this could make me a better teacher, and anything I do to be better would make all of my students better. But in general, I think what I liked the most about it is I was sitting in a room with every single teacher from all the other disciplines, and that doesn't always happen. We talk about it. We talk about how we should get together and we should do these projects together, and it could really work, and really educating the whole student and the whole child. And this was a very practical application of everything we've been talking about. We were all in the room, we all know what we do, we're good at what we do, and we were able to bring it together for the child and to move forward, and to move our school forward. Because I want to work in a school that has IB. I really do. I think we should head there. But I would be proud to work in that school, much like I'm proud to work in a school that has a great performing arts department. I think this is where we should go. I got so excited in a year of chaos that we could possibly become this kind of a school. And if I could move to Brewster and bring my child here, I would absolutely positively do it so she could have this experience. So, that's me.
Okay, so implementation of the philosophy. How do you adopt such a program? In my opinion, it starts with a philosophy, and that's what the slide says, so I'm going to stick with it. This program will bring quite a distinction to our community, and that's a great thing. It's done it for other districts that we've visited. It did it for one of the districts I worked at years ago, and I was really happy to be a part of that IB program back then. And I do look forward to have something like that here in Brewster. I make a joke, anytime it says international, I'm all about it, but it's quite exciting. So, like I said, it brings distinction, but that's without stripping away what we're proud of. And we had mentioned this before, we're always very proud of service, and it really gets the kids out into the community. This really gets the students to become more of a communicator with one another, and with communication comes peace. And that's what we want for our students, is to have a peaceful collaboration with their peers. But that's getting a little off topic, so, on the same topic, but not on the slide. So we're, as long as it enhances our Brewster spirit, then we're all for it. So who's willing to bring this distinction to the school? Our students. Which students? All of our students. Our philosophy is that IB is for all the students, and that's what you will see if we were to adopt this IB program. It's a revolutionary switch in the 21st century skills and education. No matter if they took 1 course, 5 courses at the end of their high school career, doesn't matter if they're an IB diploma grad, that's how we'll measure our success when that time comes. And so, potential course offerings, again, we're not really looking to delete course offerings, but we're just looking to make it better, make it for this generation. So the fun part is what will we be offering? We don't take away those special courses that we need to go on with life, but it'll be nice to enhance them. It's the word of the night. Enhance them a bit in order to turn them into something, something that they wouldn't get in another high school. I think that's what it's all about. And we would welcome back some great classes like our business program that we had years ago. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school, we would have more technological courses that would really enhance our students in their higher education. You'll see a change in our sports. With IB, they're looking to have more sports-centered courses to really indulge the appetite of our many students, and then along with the arts. Ms. Perdico did a wonderful job years ago when she came to this district in turning Brewster into what it is today. And, well, she came here back, in 2000, and we were talking about this before when I was a senior. And it was a big change. It was a big change. When she was 12. And of course, the language program, which she said she was 16. She was really 12. She's not giving herself. Anyway, and of course with languages and the other arts that we cherish here at Brewster.
Back to some nuts and bolts. This is a similar slide from the fall when we presented, but just to quickly recap, the plan for this year, which we were able to fulfill, was to conduct a feasibility study. Mrs. Horler attended a leadership training, and we did submit our application for candidacy. We did not submit the fee that goes along with that yet. We wanted to do that after tonight, but that application has been submitted and met the June 1st deadline. We will know by next year, by September 1st, if we're a candidacy school, which allows us to go into this next phase. And what happens at that point is IB assigns us a rep. We are able to engage in more professional learning, and then they provide some consultation, both from a distance, and they also come for verification visits in year 2. I can't stress enough, and if Nikki were here, she would tell you that a huge focus of the conference that she attended was about strategic visioning. So what type of high school do we want? Not just IB, but what type of high school do we want, and how do we operationalize that vision? And to me, when she came back so excited about the program and about the prospect of being able to engage and have these sorts of conversations with people from all different content areas to really serve all students. And of course, the first potential IB course would be in the 2020-2021 school year. So the current 8th grade going into 9th grade would be juniors when the first course would be offered, if we meet all of these internal and external benchmarks. So here are the costs, and what we try to do is to break it down, of course, by year. You see that vertically, and horizontally you'll see where the fees hit based on what particular year. The application fee, which we have not submitted yet, would be $4,000. We do pay that through title grants, and if possible, we would like to maybe engage them in some additional professional learning this summer. You'll see that professional learning is the largest cost that we would incur. So two thoughts on that. The first is, I had a conversation last week with Michelle Darby at Southern Westchester BOCES. Southern Westchester BOCES is a satellite partner with IB, and what they do basically is they survey all the IB schools around and say, what are your needs? They get a minimum of eight teachers in, and they can run a course. So for us, that's really exciting because there's one course in particular called Theory of Knowledge, which we were all sort of enthralled with on our visits. And we could send 8 Brewster teachers there to Southern Westchester BOCES and not have to incur all those travel costs. You know, there would still be, of course, examples where, you know, the coordinator would have to go to a session, a professional learning session, workshop, not at Southern Westchester BOCES, but that option is there for us, especially if we look at the IB schools as a consortium that we want to work with. The other piece is that the workshop itself, it's really the travel that gets us on the professional learning. The workshop itself ranged from $744 to $925. So to put that into perspective, AP courses range from $950 to $1,150. We actually have to send 2 high school science teachers for AP training this year. It's a requirement, and we're happy to do so because they need to be prepared to teach that course. Project Lead the Way, it's a 2-week session, but they're about $11.75 per week. So the actual workshop itself is competitive and is especially relative to some of these other programs that we know helps to improve student learning. So moving forward, what we would like to do is, with your permission, head into the next phase, which would be the candidacy phase. We know it's a 2-year process, but that's where we can really sit down and have these conversations. We'd love to send interested staff to professional learning, and of course choose a coordinator to help us get our experience and endeavor underway. Any questions? So title, we would actually use Title II for this because it's a professional learning grant, and this year, in the 17-18 school year, we didn't designate Brewster High School as a Title I. But that's something we might want to look at moving forward when we do the grant this summer, depending on how much money we receive. So we would look to, as we do whenever there's a professional learning opportunity, we would offset with grants as much as we could. So Title II is professional learning. You know, Title I, we've all had that presentation, and Title III for E&L students. So we've looked to offset. We also, the Putnam Northern Westchester Teacher Center is also very generous. They give us a grant every year as well, so we would be working with them to apply any grants that we can.
One of the things I love the most about this program is it's open to all students. And it's not, you know, I love the AP classes, I love the WCC classes, those are all great things. But this is something that every student can benefit from, and they don't have that, I don't want to say stigma, that's not the right word. But, I can't do that, that's not for me, I'm not smart enough. No, they could just go right into this class, so I love this program.
That was really important for us, and honestly, I think that's going to be one of the challenges that we have moving forward, because I think there is sort of this, thank you, misconception that this is only for the higher level students. We need to work really hard, counseling, working with parents to say, no, this is really open to all students. And part of also what we talked about, not to get too much into the weeds, but we also want to look at flexible assessment. So, you know, if there's an IB grade, that's an IB grade, but what about a Brewster High School grade, because they're earning credit here too? So how can we, again, make it even more accessible and create those, you know, low floor, high ceiling opportunities for students?
Thank you.
The other thing you mentioned was, which was also very interesting, how it brings all disciplines together for the kids. And so I just started thinking, it was, you know, for the purpose of IB, how does that translate into working together for the other things that, you know, we do, teach?
And that's exactly what, I don't know if anyone else is excited about this next phase as me, but that's exactly where I see a lot of this value in. Because some of the staff questions that we received was, aren't we putting the cart before the horse? There's so much we need to talk about in terms of accountability and how we further engage students. Well, those are the conversations we need to have moving forward. And this gives us a structure and sort of discrete outcomes and benchmarks that we need to meet moving forward. So I think it's all encompassing. You know, this is about what we want as a high school experience for our kids, and IB is a piece of that.
Right. So it just seems
That
like that
answers your question.
conversation that model, I guess, can be used for everything else that, you know, that's learned. Yeah.
Well done. Oh, sorry, yes.
I have a question. When you were discussing it, you had said that they would be measured on growth. And that could be objective and not opposed to the GPA, which would be more subjective as far as testing. And then the second part was, I think the guidance counselor said that a lot of the children that are in the IB program said they wouldn't fare well in an AP course, which is geared for college. So is this not really college, progression? I'm not quite sure.
I'm not sure if I totally understand the first question, but I can maybe answer the second question.
Subjective versus objective as far as GPA growth.
How's it graded, I guess?
How is it graded? In other words, that's
So I think it was Somers that had, that gave 2 grades, right? They gave the Somers high school grades that would go on their transcript, and then they had their IB transcript. So what they worked through in this process was, what does an A look like in terms of Somers criteria versus IB? I don't know if that answers.
I understand that, but I'm saying, is that subjective? What is the criteria? How do they?
That's what we would work through in this next phase. It's a 2-year process, and we would get have that consultant from the advisor, from the sorry, and there's still the external assessments as well.
And I was just going to say, in terms of what you asked about the college piece, again, my experience talking to lots of college reps is, one, the skills are exactly what a college is looking for, because there is a little more independence, there is a little more outside the box thinking, there is a little more, bringing many different ideas together rather than just memorizing things. So colleges look at it very favorably.
Thank you.
And one thing just that we heard at both schools that we visited was it allows for students to have a college experience with the support of high school. So they're still at home, they still have someone helping them there, and they have the teaching team to support them. But they couldn't reiterate that enough.
I actually have a student that will be timed well for this. I think it sounds very nice, very well-rounded. Do you think it will have a cost to the parents similar to the AP classes and things like that? Is there a cost involved?
I should put that in, yes. So there is, and there is, I don't know the exact number. I know there's 2 costs actually. One cost that we would look to pick up through grants, and that just says you can take an assessment, and then there's a cost for each assessment that students take. Do you remember the fees up here? Mrs. Horler would have that. 117 and right, 170 and 90 for the exam. So I think APs are up to 98, 97.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember
around there.
So there's basically an entry fee you pay. The district would cover through grants or other things.
Okay.
And then there's comparable costs that would be for any AP exam. So like they'll cover the entry, and then you would have to pay the individual test.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if I missed it, will kids get potential credit at college for that? So these are, because I know at the Mayapack, I took a Syracuse University course, I got 3 credits at college. Is this what we're talking about, similar to that, or?
Yes, very much so. That's a hard question to answer because every college evaluates those kind of things differently. But it is looked at as certainly comparable to AP classes and beyond in some cases. So yes, absolutely, you could get college credit for
So
it.
it's pretty widely accepted?
Yes.
And there's actually some information on their website that shows internationally how many schools accepted and what criteria. If you go for the full-blown diploma program, some students enter, sophomore year, like they have, because it's so widely accepted, especially the rigor of that diploma program. But there's the college credit piece, and there's also the attractability of a high school transcript, right? So the admissions officer would say, oh, the student wanted to push him or herself and engage in this sort of coursework.
I think it's great. I have a few questions. So you guys keep saying it has the rigor of freshman, like a freshman year at the end of this program, they get that. So when you talk about AP, you often are saying, all right, you guys are ready for more advanced coursework that is similar to college, but since IB is open to all students and they might not be ready for that rigor, how is it giving them that college level education if there's a difference between that kind of level of advancement versus, a regular level of course?
Sure, so a couple of answers to that. First is what we would be looking to do with this program is to push students in a supportive way, right? So we want them to get turned on to learning while they're still here with us. So it would be about extending their current learning opportunities and helping them grow as learners, right? So that's one piece. The second piece is that there is, we didn't want to get into it too much tonight, but there's ways to disaggregate the coursework. So there's standard level courses, there's higher level courses. Standard level courses, usually over the course of 1 year. Higher level courses, you're committing to 2 years. So we would look in terms of implementation to say, you know, those, an English course, for example, since students take 4 years and they are required to take 4 years of English to graduate, that would be maybe a higher level course. So there are ways that IUP disaggregates it, standard level, higher level, but there's also ways that we internally would look for certain measures to make sure we're pushing students. And again, that idea of low floor, high ceiling. So we want students to engage in coursework that they may not have been turned on to before, and to be able to push themselves moving forward.
So you guys stressed many times that you're not taking anything away, but you just can't come in and add all this coursework. So, you know, how does a student decide between AP, Regents, IB? You know, what would be culled? Because there's no sense in having, you know, all of these different programs for a small base of students. So how, you have to take something out. You have to cull something to make it work. So how do you look to balance that?
So we wouldn't look to, there's going to be some, we kept calling it natural pruning. So, you know, if there's 6 kids in an AP course, that AP course shouldn't necessarily run, right? So there would be some, if that were the case, we would be looking to enhance. So it's like so what we really need to do is to talk to parents and sit down in their 9th grade year to say, in their 8th grade year, what would this look like moving forward over the next 4 years? So if we, you know, we have a strong math program where students are accelerated in middle school, right? Those students could end up with a Calc PC by the end of their junior year or end of their senior year, depending on if they take the jump program or not. So in that particular case, you might not necessarily want, if you have a student that's in that accelerated track, they might not be taking mathematical studies or, you know, further mathematics, right? But it would be about, and this is why the counseling piece is so important and why we need to send counselors to this training and also to talk to other schools, because it's about personalizing experiences for kids. And I don't know that we would be pulling, there might be some AP students who say, yeah, I want to do this full diploma program, and that might pull. But, you know, I think this is really what we saw it as, was more about engaging students who may be in Regents courses to say, yeah, I want to stretch a little bit and, you know, take a sports, exercise, and health science course. Honestly, we have a lot of students who, and we have started the analysis of this, but in looking at the number of students who stop taking courses beyond what they're required, we want that to be lower, right? So we want students to be in their senior year, in their junior year, not to have 3 or 4 study halls, right? We want them to be able to have these opportunities for them to engage in this coursework and have those opportunities there.
Also reduce sections. That's what we talked about too. Like if there's 3 sections in one class, offer it 2, and the 3rd section would be an IB course.
Which might happen.
So I'll also point out that like there was a redesign in social studies where they shifted like stuff around, right? And it created this pathway where sophomores would reach their sophomore year and they'd finish with their required reading. And then that opened up all these possibilities for electives. You had like sports and American culture, you had criminal justice, you had different things in any kid could take. And over time we've lost a few of those. And it's possible that if we adopt this kind of program, we'd have a framework to include some of those things that have sort of been falling by the wayside. So I think that you have some possibilities in that respect.
Okay. We're going to have to try to wrap this up. We have a couple more presentations to make, and we still have our business meeting to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next presentation is Mr. Stockfield. As he makes his way to the podium, first of all, I want to thank you for your patience and waiting to get onto one of the agendas. Last year, a few board members and I attended a NISBA conference, and one of the topics or presentations that kicked off the conference was really a presentation on how districts need to focus on marketing what they do well. And more and more districts are finding that that is a necessity. It's not not a good to have, but a must have, because it's really difficult if you don't have someone involved in both going out and collecting those good stories about what's occurring and publicizing that those messages can get lost. So Mr. Stockdale has some experience in the area of public relations that he wants to present to the Board of Education for consideration. And at our July 3rd board meeting, we have a presentation, another presentation, to also consider some options for public relations. So thank you, Mr. Stockdale.
Thank you very much, Brad. Mrs. Song?
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much. That's why I'm here. My name is Daniel Stockfield, and most of Brewster knows me as a photographer. First of all, I had my own business in Brewster for the past 15 years now, and prior to that, I was a vice president of marketing at the New York Times by the age of 27. And was in the Public Relations Society of America. My whole college degree is in communications. And I also created marketing departments for a whole bunch of .coms. And then 9/11 happened, and my wife and I decided to change careers. And I pursued a hobby, which is photography. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here for communications. All right. But first of all, I have a beautiful wife who is a school teacher. She's a school teacher in Westchester County. And we have a 24-year-old son who successfully went through Brewster schools, and a 13-year-old son who just finished 7th grade at Wells Middle School, and they're both doing really well. So what I put together is a presentation to give a proposal. It's an idea. Hopefully that'll be very receptive to everybody. Sorry, I had also prepared on doing this at the board, at the district office in front of a huge audience. So sorry that some of the writing will be small, but here we go. You guys have heard me at previous board meetings. I usually mention, being part of solutions, so that's kind of what I'm calling this. All right. Okay. So yes, this will be communications, for the Brewster School District, and a public relations proposal. And you guys know that school communications throughout history has come a long way, and they were all thought to be the fastest way possible back then. Even the dreaded telephone call home is becoming obsolete in the 21st century. So let's fast forward to today's lightning fast technology. All right. Now we're cruising. Actually, just kidding. All right. Okay, that's much better. Now we're lightning fast. The world and information at the tips of our fingers. But with today's technology, there's more room for miscommunications, less face-to-face interaction, more channels of information through biased websites and social media opinions. There are many factors that interfere known as noise. This could be in the form of cell phone interruptions and dropped signals, the internet, and then there's emails. Actually, wait, that's better. All right. I know that's what my inbox can look like at times, with the majority of it being spam, advertisements, and other forms of noise. Or there can just be noise in the biggest form. Sorry, just trying to be funny. So, educational public relations is a planned and systematic management function to help improve the programs and services of an educational organization. It relies on comprehensive two-way communications process involving both internal and external publics, with the goal of stimulating a better understanding of the role, objectives, accomplishments, and needs of the organization. Educational communications programs assist in interpreting public attitudes, identify and help shape policies and procedures in the public interest, and carry on involvement in information activities which earn public understanding and support. So why do we need public relations for our school district? So this is the media age. School communication needs have increased dramatically and become more complex. A school district needs a professional PR person to develop and execute its communication plans through both print and electronic media and face-to-face communication, and to handle relations with the multitude of media that call school districts. Education is under attack from taxpayers, business groups, and others at all times as they're suspicious or are in disagreement with the professional decisions that the district makes daily. School district needs a professional school PR person to publicize the positive news about student and staff achievements and programs, and to develop a coordinated, proactive, rather than reactive approach that anticipates problems before they develop. If there is no positive communication from the school district, the critics' voices are the ones that will be heard. The scope of successful school public relations has expanded greatly from what in the past was mostly written communication to a greatly increased need for face-to-face communication with the many publics in our community. A school district needs a professional PR person to schedule community relations programming, realtor orientations, breakfasts with chambers of commerce or clergy, and American Education Week open houses to build informed support and solid community relationships. Too much time is spent reeling from the results of half information, untimely, or even inaccurate information. Or there's a misinterpretation of information which can lead to time-consuming and frivolous debates. This can often lead to gossip and rumor mills. It's like a game of telephone when we were kids, when a message was twisted around so many times that it becomes something completely different. And unfortunately, gossip can become reality to many. Hold on 1 second, please, I'm sorry. Sorry about that, everybody. I accidentally jumped down like 19 pages. Just kidding. Okay. So things can get downright ugly for those who feel cheated, unheard, or victimized. And that's not good for anyone. And then that leads to the question of what's fact and what's an opinion. What arises next is a big wall between everyone, and we've all seen this happen. This creates an us versus them atmosphere, when it should just be we, and then everyone would be ready to listen and be productive. So what is the solution? Someone who will take the reins with the communications, public relations, marketing, social media, to become the liaison between the schools, faculty and staff, administration, board of education, students and their families. Then, you shower everyone with all the wonderful things that are happening in our district. Give people less to complain about. They prefer to feel good about where they send their children every day, that it's an amazing place to be. Community will feel good about living here. Taxpayers will see the value in our schools. Great thing about our district, there's always good news somewhere. Having someone whose responsibility is to be constantly looking at the messages we send our internal and external publics is invaluable to a public institution which depends on its community support. Communications is part of everyone's job in a school district. However, someone has to be charged with the responsibility to manage the district's communications. School PR professionals monitor how the district is perceived by stakeholders and then can help implement strategies to improve public opinion. Any district that chooses not to employ at least one school PR professional is clearly leaving the public opinion function to chance. So what's needed in order to make this all happen? Getting started is often difficult because critics say that you shouldn't use tax dollars for puffery, spin doctoring, and techniques to make individuals like board members and superintendents look good. Public relation needs to be public's interest. It needs to be grounded in solid two-way communication techniques and used as a vehicle to build trust, confidence, and support for doing the best for all our children in our schools. School systems and schools have a public responsibility to tell parents and taxpayers how the schools are spending their money and seeking their insight on helping the school district deliver high quality and an efficient educational program. The public has a right to know and be engaged in their schools, and they need someone in the schools trained in communication so they can get clear answers and guidance on how to work with their schools. So what can a school communications professional do for our district? This person can handle the following major functions. Provide public relations counsel taking a proactive stance, anticipates problems and provides solutions. Handles all aspects of the school district's publications such as its newspaper, internal and external newsletters, social media, among others. The internal newsletter will help inform faculty and staff about what's happening each quarter. An external newsletter targeted to the parents and community can do the same. Typical tangible assets of a communications effort, brochures, newsletters, websites, photography, and more, all play important roles in disseminating key information. But successful communication involves both listening and talking. It interprets the schools for communities and it interprets the communities for the schools. Our superintendent's community forum at the beginning of this month was a great example of effective communications with the parents. Social media management would include making sure the district is on all major social media with strategy and purpose, including being an active member of local community Facebook pages to help bridge any gaps in communications. Also, this may include the creation of a structured and promoted YouTube channel exclusively for district communications. Create a social media awareness program for the students and the parents. We all can learn more about this popular form of communications. Focus on promoting the district mobile app as a necessary tool for effective communications with the students, parents, faculty, and staff. Writes news releases for all local newspaper, TV, radio, works to get the media coverage of school district news, and serves as the media's liaison with the school district. It stays closely attuned to the entire budget-making process and promotes productive community input. Develops budget and bond issue campaigns and publications. Writes and develops a crisis communications plan for the district, detailing how to reach its internal and external publics, gathers the facts in dealing with media in a crisis. This could also include educating the parents of our plans as well. Conducts formal and informal research to determine public opinion and attitude as a basis for planning and action. Promotes the district's strengths, achievements, and its solutions to problems. Vigorously publicizes student and staff achievements and perhaps develops a staff and retirement recognition program. Answers public and new resident questions for information, maintains extensive background files, keeps district historical and budget passage records, and plans for school district anniversary celebrations. And to add to that idea, create a hub for community and parent non-private issues where parents can get their voices heard the optimal way for what works for them and the district. Having a District 411 will encourage parents to communicate in a more structured manner rather than asking social media. Provides public relations training to staff and PTAs in areas such as talking to the media, communicating in a crisis, and recognizing that non-teaching staff are part of the school PR team. Serves as the district's liaison with community groups such as civic associations and service clubs. Helps plan and publicize district parents, senior citizen, community service programs, and communicate with the local government. Develops ways to bring the community into the schools. It's important for the community to see the consistent consistency in the brand of the district. Brand is not just the logo, it's the colors, the images, and the voice from the district. If it's not consistent and strategic, it becomes chaotic and will be dismissed by the community. Included in branding are the photos that come from the district. Professional photos really make a statement. Think of a college brochure. You see top quality professional photographs as the college knows that imagery is very valuable. This could also include new hire portraits, student concerts and shows, and valedictorian portraits for the high school lobby. I don't want to turn this slide. Also included in the branding is original graphic designing that perhaps the students can help with. True communication, we know, is a two-way process in both inflow and outflow of information. The school PR professional, in essence, helps keep both eyes of the district open and works to keep the public, in turn, both informed and involved in the schools. If we're going to turn the tide of public opinion regarding our schools, we're going to have to get more strategic and sophisticated in our approach to communications. Today's consumers are the savviest and most demanding in history, having been saturated with sophisticated advertising and marketing techniques since birth. Parents have high expectations in terms of school-to-home communications, customer service, and tailor-made education programs. While anyone who doesn't have children in our schools is going to be highly influenced by family members, neighbors, friends, co-workers, realtors, and the news media. The days when we could count on the kids' backpacks as a primary communication channel are long gone. As our population ages, fewer and fewer taxpayers will have a direct, personal, and vested interest in supporting public schools. In other words, they most likely won't have children in the public schools. They won't have any first-hand experience to let them know that their local public schools are doing a great job. So how will we reach them? How will we convince them to pay higher taxes and invest in someone else's children? Strategic communication can't solve these complex issues, but it can do a better job of placing children first on the public's agenda. So overall, the community will benefit from the Director of Communications position because, there will be less miscommunications resulting in the families receiving accurate and timely information. It'll help tear down the walls between the community and the administration and the board and the faculty. It'll help the district's approval rating, which will make for a happier community. Families will then want to get more involved with the district. It will save thousands of dollars in man-hours for the administration, office staffs, and faculty. The local business community will become more supportive of the district and activities which could lead to more internship opportunities for the students and more financial support from the businesses. It will increase the success of future budget votes. Brewster's reputation will improve, which could lead to a higher value of diplomas received and also will help property values. It will help add a layer of protection for the entire district, having less PR fiascos. This will result in having happier district lawyers, hopefully, will have less work to do, which will also save money. Now there's some really great news. I know someone who can do this job. That's it. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Yes?
So you're proposing the job for yourself?
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
You're proposing this job for yourself? What would the cost associated with this thing?
That will be determined based on how much of the position is created. All right, if you go full blown, I mean, I researched the Hudson Valley. There's schools that actually have communications departments, all right, and then they have, one person, two people doing it. So it depends on the extent and need, and of course the budget, what the budget will allow. Sound cool? Anybody else? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Some administrators are joining.
Sure.
beginning of the school year, the Code of Conduct Committee was convened. When I became superintendent, prior to that, didn't have any involvement with student discipline in terms of suspension data or looking at letters of suspension or superintendent's hearings. And something caught my attention the first year, and it was actually at the same time Mrs. Hoyler came on as principal. 5 students had been, high school students at that point, they were seniors, been suspended from Brewster High School starting in the spring, and that suspension was going into I think as late as November or December of their senior year. And, although the offense was related to drug use, by and large the students' disciplinary record was, not scattered with, incidents. And it was astonishing to me that these students would be out of school for that length of time. In terms of the disciplinary infraction or the consequence, counseling was not part of that, their penalty. So that caught my attention, and I felt strongly about finding a way to bring the children back to Brewster High School. So along with Mrs. Hoyler, Ms. Gosh, and Ms. Sullivan, we actually reconvened a superintendent's hearing to bring them back into the school district, and they were brought back, and they had no other incidents. Part of their return was also to meet with their counselor on a regular basis, which they did, and they also graduated successfully. So that told me a lot about the impact of a suspension on students who were not in school. They were receiving 2 hours a day of tutoring, which was in no shape, form, or fashion adequate for them to be successful as seniors. So that was a success story in terms of finding an alternative pathway to return students who committed an infraction that obviously was very troublesome to the school district, but might not necessarily have been something to suspend them for 6 months for. So the Code of Conduct Committee really came from that concern that I had as I entered into my role from Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment to Superintendent. And in numerous conversations with the administrators, we talked about our Code of Conduct and how that Code of Conduct tied our hands, because it was really based upon a premise of zero tolerance, which was pretty common going back to the 80s. Which really was built upon this notion that every incident, whether it was violent or non-violent incident, was treated pretty much the same. So these codes of conduct, which were also laid out the rules and the norms and the procedures for students, also laid those out for any adults in the system. But the part of the code of conduct that we're going to focus on, and that the administrators and I have been talking about, has to do with the rules around how to handle students who don't follow the rules and or who find themselves in violation of some of the procedures that could end up in penalty, and most frequently that penalty is a suspension. Our code of conduct, like others, embody that philosophy, that there's a consequence for something that you've done. This has been a part of our history for many, many, many years. It's revised to, whenever state policies are revised, but the philosophy pretty much hasn't been revised. And we're not the only district that has embedded in its policy a pretty punitive system of consequences. So the zero tolerance policies in U.S. schools emanated out of the Federal Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990. Most of us really recognize Columbine as one of those actions, those school shootings that really shook the nation. That also included 2 previous incidents. I don't know if you remember Heath High School and Westside Middle High School, which were also shootings. And as a result of the terror of those incidents, the zero tolerance policies that were really about keeping guns away from schools also became embedded in the way that school districts and schools handled just general incidents of infractions against policies or codes of conduct. So these zero tolerance policies then began to influence and shape the rest of how schools handled misbehavior, whether it was violent or whether or non-violent. And because there's a lot of research on the impact of these kinds of approaches, there's really no evidence that these, zero tolerance policies actually change student behavior, that they actually increase school climate and school safety. And obviously, in some communities, zero tolerance policies have been instrumental in fueling the school-to-prison pipeline, meaning that when students are out, they're typically in trouble for long periods of time, and over time that can be compounded, and they can end up in, dealing with law enforcement on a much more serious level. So why are we looking at our code of conduct? Lots of districts are looking at their codes of conduct because they want to get away from the zero tolerance policies, which are way too broad. There's an over-reliance upon suspensions. There are very few options available to address this whole range of difficulties and issues that any student could find him or herself encountering. Some students spend many days out of school, similar to the 5 students I started the presentation with. And some of these students are vulnerable, and they are at risk of falling behind severely, as well as dropping out. And most of the student behavior really doesn't change as a result of a suspension. In most cases, it just makes adults feel as though the matter is taken very seriously, and in a sense, the adults are vindicated when the students are punished in some ways. I'm not saying any adults in our district, but in some districts. To continue, as I said earlier, violent and non-violent actions are treated exactly the same. When students are suspended out of school, they don't have a chance to make amends for their actions or for making their poor choices. They don't get a chance to reflect on what they've done and how they could have done it differently. If they are suspended due to drug use, we suspend them and they are at home or wherever they are. I'm not saying they're doing drugs at home, but they have unsupervised time which could lead to them engaging in that very behavior that got them into trouble to begin with. Mental health issues are not addressed when students are not in school to meet with their counselor or their mental health counselor, and the anxiety levels and depression levels do frequently increase when students are detached from their school and their peers and the support team that's available to help them. Concerns of disproportionality are definitely something that school districts look at. In our district, most of the students who are suspended happen to be male, white, Hispanic, and frequently with a disability. In some districts, the ratio could be different, but those are numbers that and a statistic that we have to pay attention to because the federal government tracks that as well. And certainly that could, trigger an action for the district to improve that if, in fact, that we were overly suspending students with disabilities or other students at a higher rate than others. So the code of conduct, which was comprised of our administrators, our mental health counselors, social workers, parents, and we also had 4 secondary students on the committee. 2 are from here, from Wells, and 2 are from the high school. And we thought a lot about this notion of what we were hearing and what was being reported to different people, which included incidents where parents and students were reporting fairly regularly that there was bullying occurring and name-calling occurring. There was an increase, as we had noted, in activities associated with vaping or juuling, which has become pretty commonplace among students throughout the country. There's an increased number of students with disabilities who are being suspended. And we also reviewed some trends in our suspension data across K through 12. And we administered a school climate survey, which was administered to grades 6 through 12, so that we can get a more comprehensive look at what we were being told, and what we were seeing when we had analyzed the student suspension data, and obviously what students could report to us in terms of their own perceptions through a survey. As I mentioned earlier, a review of the suspension data was also crucial, and Mrs. Gosh will take us through some of that analysis.
We did a better job this year of using some of the tools that we have available in the campus, which is our student management system, as well as Alpine data management system, to look at sort of broad patterns in our behavior data. And some of what we saw was not all that surprising, but some was. So just to speak in broad strokes. First, of course, there's a developmental aspect to behavior data. So what we see at JFK with pushing, right? If that's the most frequent event there, maybe it is the bus at CD Star, and at the high school we see cutting class. Of course, so there's a developmental nature to the behavior events that we see in our students. This one's interesting. Referrals from the bus was the most frequently reported behavior incident. So that gives us a good path moving forward and to work with Mrs. Smith and her team to make sure that we put some expectations and some structures in place in order to address that. And again, you don't need an education degree to know that unstructured time would be problematic for K-2. So some of the locations that we see issues, recess, hallway, again, the bus, these are areas that we need to work on and pay better attention to. One of the valuable outcomes of this process, I met with the Dignity Act coordinators 4 or 5 times this year to review the data. And what we saw is even the way we code things needs to improve. So we can't call everything general misbehavior because it gives us no path forward. It doesn't give us any information about where it happened, when it happened, or even sort of what category it would fall into. So we're doing a better job of making sure that we're categorizing things correctly so that we can use it to inform our decision making moving forward. In terms of suspension data, again, we got much deeper in terms of subgroups and where we saw some of these trends, but just speaking into the middle school and the high school, good news is at the high school, the number of suspension incidents and the number of students suspended are both on a downward trend. Of course, we would love for that trend to continue, but we're on the right path there. At the middle school, we saw an increase, and so that then, of course, asks you to go a step further and see what this was all about. And we attributed it to 1, maybe 2 incidents that really spiked up those numbers. So this is just an example of how we're using some of this data to inform our decision making moving forward.
One of the new additions to collecting data, and this would be perception data, would be through the use of a school climate survey, which we haven't used before. We used through our you've heard a presentation from the Putnam Coalition of Communities of Care that actually administer a survey on risk behaviors, drug and alcohol use among students in grades 8 through 12. That's done every year, but a school climate survey is a new tool, and it is a tool, and it's a tool for helping schools to improve not only school safety, but to assess the quality of teaching and learning, as well as to fortify relationships across the school, within the school, and across the district. We use a tool called Panorama, which is fairly common among schools. There are a couple of our local school districts that use it in Westchester. It was developed by Harvard University psychometricians to ensure that there's validity and reliability. The responses are benchmarked against 6,500 schools around the country that also take this survey. We administered in January of this year, 1,244 students in grades 6 through 12 took the survey. 687 at Brewster High School, which is 687 out of 1,067 students of the total population, which equals to 64% of the student body. In the middle school here, 563 students out of 690, or 82%, participated in the survey. It was voluntary. It was within a class that was determined by Mr. Clark and Mrs. Hoyler. Each student took the survey on their Chromebook using a unique student ID, so it was each student could only take the survey once. The survey covered 5 topics, and these are universal: school belonging, school climate, engagement, rigorous expectations, and school safety. There were 31 questions, and 3 were customized questions created by our high school students who've now since graduated this June, who were part of the Demo Congress. Demo Congress was very active in taking a temperature of what the school climate was independent of the survey. So we enlisted their involvement by asking them to create 3 questions. Panorama allows school districts to customize certain questions that are specific to things that they're interested in learning about. So Demo Congress has been doing a lot of work to get a sense of what it means to be a student in Brewster High School. What were some of the barriers to students getting along with each other, or the types of issues that they were dealing with? And so they came up with these 3 questions. How often do you hear words that could possibly offend someone used in the school? How often do you use words that could possibly offend someone? And how often do you intervene when you hear words that could possibly offend someone? And each of these surveys, a combined survey with both the Wells Middle School and high school results, and then their independent results for both Wells and the high school, which are embedded in this presentation. The survey took about 15 minutes to complete. And the Panorama service actually makes available surveys for parents, for teachers, and for staff that are available. And again, all of these are, created by psychometricians who spend a lot of time making sure that the questions are written in such a way that the results are valid and reliable. The cost of the survey was $2,000. The service to use the survey was $2,805. That cost covered the administration of the survey to 1,900 students. Obviously, we didn't have that many. And we could use that, we could administer that survey multiple times during the school year if we chose to. Most districts do. They administer it potentially in the fall and once again in the spring, particularly if they are trying to monitor the impact of the intervention that they've chosen to use. The service was paid for by federal grant, and it's BOCES aidable. So these are I won't go into these. I will ask the principals, I'll start with Mr. Clark and then Mrs. Sullivan. I think it's reversed. I'll start with Mrs. Sullivan and then Mr. Clark, to go into what they have concluded from looking at the survey data themselves. They have the data, they've taken it back and reviewed it with their PBIS teams, as well as their school safety or crisis team, to get a sense of, does this, do we see this in our interactions? Do we see this in our suspension data? Are these conversations that are being had among our teachers as they look at, the kinds of things that are happening in the schools? And then if they are, what can we do differently? We're doing some things. Are those things effective? What else could we do? So the principals are going to speak to particular data points that caught their attention as they looked at the survey results and what actions they are taking as a result of reviewing those. Ms. Sullivan.
Good evening. What we took from the data, we actually shared this survey with our MTSS teams at the high school and also our PBIS team at the high school, which are essentially our school climate teams. So what we decided to do was plan out the upcoming year based on what we've concluded from the data. Now we know that there are certain variables in the data that we may need to inquire further to learn more information, to learn really the relevant, accurate information, the who. And so what we're doing this year is our PBIS team met at the end of the school year. And we decided that we are going to use that team to really look at the data and drive what we do next year. We also included a few other key groups in our school. Our Democratic Congress, they really have a pulse on the climate of the school. They are very communicative. They meet with administration regularly. They are very, very, very connected to the faculty and staff, and also other students. They were extremely instrumental this past year in starting the conversation. They facilitated student conventions based on some topics and issues that students really showed concern about. So they are, in a sense, the ambassadors that we look to when we talk about getting the information needed to move forward. We also utilize the school climate survey. So what we decided was that the focus for the upcoming school year would really be on health and wellness. That's kind of the theme. That's our theme that we would like to really work on in the culture of the school. And it doesn't mean to change the culture. It's really to help the culture evolve to help meet the needs of the students and make the students feel like they have a sense of belonging to the school community and increase the engagement. So here are some of the things that we've already begun implementing and will continue through the upcoming school year. So the first event really occurred with our incoming freshman class. We had our class of 2022 orientation June 15th. What we've learned is that students really learn and idolize each other. So we enlisted a lot of our student representatives, and these were not just your everyday student leaders. These were students who I will tell you had senior prom the night before and came back and showed up bright and early at BHS the next morning because they wanted to help welcome in the incoming class and really give them a chance to make a connection and form a rapport with another student, so they did feel like they had a sense of belonging. So they actually facilitated a majority of the orientation piece. They gave tours in small groups, they had some great talking points, which gave students chances to ask questions and really connect with a face next year, so when they do come to the high school, they already are starting to feel that sense of belonging. We also have a few initiatives that we're really excited about through the PBIS committee that the committee came up with, one of which is Think Kindness. This is actually a global campaign as well as a school-based campaign. Think Kindness actually started from a man who was standing in line and saw a child rush to the door of a bank and held the door open for several people who needed to who were carrying things in and just wanted to do something nice, and he didn't even think about it. And it was so well revered by the people that he had this idea of, what if there are acts of kindness that continue. So with this act of kindness, we've actually gotten some great support from our PTSA for this initiative as well, or for this program. Also our Safe School Ambassadors, which is facilitated by Mrs. Lodge, and our challengers. So what we'll do is we'll have during the school year, it's 15 days straight, and we will come up with specific things, challenges during the day that are really acts of kindness that challenge all students, all faculty, all staff to really get involved and actually carry out some designated act of kindness during the day. And then on the global scale, what this does actually is collect gently used shoes for orphans. And there's a challenge to collect a certain amount of shoes to actually donate them to orphans so they have shoes to wear. So that's part of the Think Kindness. And really what we're trying to do is get all student groups involved. Students who may not normally gravitate towards the leadership roles or something, in a club or an organization, we have a lot of chances now to really help those students feel like they have that sense of belonging. We also have, we're looking at designating a half day for a series of workshops that students can attend. And they're centered around health, wellness, coping skills, things like yoga, mindfulness, just working on some strategies in difficult situations. But we're still planning that out, and it will develop as the year progresses. Another program that we're bringing in is called One Love, and that really helps to focus on healthy relationships. We know that in the middle school to high school years, relationships are key between students. The socialization is almost everything to our students, and that's what we've noticed. I've noticed that in my experience on the high school level, that the relationships really consume students. And so it's important for the students to understand what healthy relationships are, to recognize signs that relationships may not be healthy, and to be there as peers to support each other as they navigate through the relationships. So these will be, this program will be not a one-time assembly. It will be ongoing with several components throughout the year. We also have a focus on the mental health and wellness And so we do have Kevin Hines. He is a dynamic speaker, and he has a compelling story of hope and recovery with his struggles through a lot of adversities. And he will be coming to Brewster High School. Before he actually comes to the high school to speak, our school counseling staff will be working with our PE teachers to introduce our students to this whole assembly and really kind of help them navigate through it. And so that no student will feel maybe like they're blindsided, or that maybe they've gone through something extremely tumultuous in their own life and they're able to really work through it. And that's what we're really focusing on as we go through this. We also have some additional things we're doing. Who doesn't like getting good news sent home? We are kind of going old school a little bit. We are going to send some good news postcards home. Mrs. Barnes is actually designing them right now. And they will exemplify when students are caught doing good character traits, showing good things, giving students a chance to experience positive feedback and success. And those are two very important and critical factors when we talk about students being engaged and feeling a sense of belonging. We will also be continuing our work with Democratic Congress and continuing the student volunteers that work with our JFK students. Mrs. O'Sullivan and Mrs. McLeod really had a really great program started, and I'm hoping to continue that and include more students and work with Dr. Zamberlin, who has really been amazing and welcoming. JFK has been welcoming our students, and they've really felt so rewarded by going to JFK and working with the students over there. So just to sum up, we are really just looking to take things that work very well and help them evolve. In terms of the culture, it's not a culture change or shift, it's a cultural evolution to make sure that our students are successful and they're healthy and they feel like they really want to be at Brewster High School and do well. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. So we start every year for the past 4 years by doing a school-wide read. Okay? So one of the things that struck me when I was looking at the school climate survey was school belonging. There was a 43% favorable rating. Now that doesn't mean that 57% are dissatisfied, but it's not a high enough number. Even more striking to me, 72% of students said that the behavior of other students has affected their learning in a negative way. So this is a middle school. Kids behave like middle schoolers on a regular basis. But the fact that, having this survey sort of, brought to our attention that, how kids behave to each other in classrooms really does have an impact on other people. And people think about it. And every month we have monthly meetings with the 6th grade, with the 7th grade, and 8th grade where we talk about these things. And it's just our way of sort of educating the kids about what our expectations are. So every year we start the school year with a school-wide read. So this year we're going to be reading a book called Restart by Gordon Corman. And the premise of this book is about a student who falls off of a roof and he develops amnesia. And when he comes back to school, he realizes that he's a bully, or he was a bully. And certain people look to him like he's sort of heroic, but he realizes in his new persona that these kids are kind of jerks. But other people look at him as like he's really affected them in a negative way. So what we do is we have a committee that meets during the summer, a committee of teachers. Every summer we do this where we get together based on the teachings that we've collaborated with an organization called Facing History and Ourselves. And what we do is we'll develop curriculum. So when we go back to school, we will have read this book, the entire community will have read this book, and we will look to sort of glean what information is important from this book. So we'll break it down in our group that meets on July 31st and August 1st to monthly themes. What are we going to focus on each month? So for example, maybe the first month we want to talk about, what is it like to be a victim of bullying, right? Because this is the theme of this book. And what we try to do is, and we've evolved, we've gotten pretty good over the last couple of years, is we try to get students to make presentations. Because these are things that are near and dear to students' hearts that they want to talk about. So a lot of times we'll have students who will sort of help us run the assembly, and they're very eager to get up here and to present on their own experiences. In addition, we have PLC once a month, and we'll try to coordinate so that we'll have speakers from outside organizations that come to our school, and whenever we can, it'll focus on that specific theme of that month. Okay? So again, it's all about educating, reminding people. In addition to the speakers, the monthly meetings, in addition to the speakers that we have come in, we also have a quote of the day that's related to the monthly theme. So every day on the announcements, there will be a quote of the day. In addition, there's one thing that when I was looking at the information, there was this one story that came to mind. It's a story about a kid who has Tourette's, a kid named Jalen. And he decided that he wanted to stand up in front of people and tell them his story about what it was like to be bullied. And his story got so much positive feedback that he sort of took it on the road. And he's spoken to over 100,000 students across the country about his experiences of being bullied. So that's one of the things that I'm going to bring to our committee on July 31st and August 1st and say, let's look at this story. And when we go back to school, we bring all the students, we'll develop lessons for the first week of school, and all the teachers, all the staff in the building will be in classrooms with students to talk about these themes, and we'll have lessons sort of designed around these different topics. And it's a pretty powerful teaching experience for all the students and all the teachers involved on that day. Another statistic that caught my attention, only 30% of students responded favorably when asked how connected they feel to adults at the school. Anybody who has been a part of our Wells community knows that over the last year or so we've instituted a Bear Bucks reward system through our PBIS team. And we've handed out over 3,000 Bear Bucks this year to students. So that's a considerable number. That means 3,000 kids were recognized on 3 different occasions by teachers, by staff members for doing something positive. And that's powerful. We have 3 boxes outside the auditorium, one for 6th, one for 7th, one for 8th grade. We collect all the Bear Bucks. At the end, at each monthly meeting, we'll do a drawing where several students can win something. So they all have a chance. They really sort of crave these Bear Bucks. And it's not just about giving the kids a reward, it's also about reminding the staff that we don't want to focus on negative behaviors, we want to focus on positive behaviors. So by reaching out to students saying, I recognize that you did something well, okay, it calls attention to those positive behaviors that we want. Too often we concentrate or we focus on the negative behaviors and call attention to them. However, when we focus on the positive behaviors, it creates a much better school climate. Another thing that we initiated this year, I went to a training early on in the year on restorative justice. And it was really, in my 20 years of education, it was probably the most powerful experience that I've ever had. And the premise of restorative justice is basically everybody gets together in a circle and we're all equals. Whether I'm the principal of the school, whether I'm a student in the circle, we're all equals. And we talk to each other as people. And we talk about what may have occurred, what we may have done, how our actions may have impacted somebody in a negative way. Okay? And it's truly it's powerful because it helps us to see each other as people, maybe not just, you're the principal, you're the disciplinarian, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm afraid to be here. I've gone through too many boxes of tissues in my office. Okay, but bringing these kids together to talk about these things, not just to say you're going to be out of school for 5 days, but you've hurt somebody else. Okay, and now you're going to be sort of called to speak to that person to sort of make some sort of restoration for your actions. And we've we've sort of rolled this out on 4 or 5 occasions this year, and every time, you know, I've had a very powerful experience in doing it, and we hope to expand upon that next year. Again, better understanding, it helps build empathy, and it creates awareness of how our behavior impacts other people. Mentoring, we've also had some success with unofficial mentoring this year. We've had a couple of students who were repeatedly getting into trouble. Their behavior, we showed some consistent negative behavior. So we linked them up with an adult. And we said, look, can you sort of just take this kid under your wing, and can you just kind of spend some time with them, maybe give up your lunches on a voluntary basis, helping the kid understand, look, you're not in trouble, but we're worried about some of the behaviors you're exhibiting, and we need you to make sure that you don't exhibit them anymore. So we're going to put you together with an adult. And we had a couple instances where kids who had gotten in a lot of trouble didn't get in any more trouble. And it was powerful. So we're going to expand on that this year. And again, it's something that we talk about in faculty meetings, it's something that we talk about in staff. All too often, you know, adults see a behavior and they want to unload on a student for that behavior. I've done it myself, okay, and I'm not proud of it, but we have to understand that a lot of times kids who exhibit bad behaviors, especially if they don't know any better a lot of the time, okay, or they can't control that behavior for whatever reason, or they're learning that behavior from some adult at home. So what we want to do, you know, we've had some very moving experiences. We've had kids who have been, you know, really just a handful this past year, where we've had staff sort of get to know them a little bit better as people. We've had, you know, a couple of adults came together for our 8th grade dance, and they actually took people shopping because they realized that those people couldn't have that experience without an outside adult sort of stepping in and helping them. And again, it made a powerful impact on our students, and I think it made an even more powerful impact on our staff. That, you know, when we can reach out to these kids and really try to make a difference in their lives, there's nothing better that we can do for kids. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Although the survey was administered to students at the middle school here and at the high school to capture their perceptions, those children don't just show up, you know, out of nowhere into 6th grade. They've been in JFK and CV Star. So it was important for them to also analyze these data and consider, you know, how what they're doing could, you know, potentially lead to students, you know, finding themselves in difficulty of some sort. So Mr. Conroy, Ms. Cherry, and Dr. Zamperlin will take you through some of the activities that they're engaged in to also pinpoint some directions that hopefully influence students to make different choices.
Thank you. As Dr. Henning-Piedmont said, you know, the vast majority of our students start in kindergarten. We've been analyzing this data to take a look at what are we doing on our level, where the children pass through the system over 12 years. And when we put things up here like making better choices on the bus during lunch and recess, and we mentioned earlier about those unstructured times, children in K-5 are structured most of their day in the classroom. When we say the unstructured time, we're actually talking about children's independent time and how they learn as independent actors, and what they do in their actions translates into their learning. So we've been working on this as a K-5 program, and we have some ideas moving forward.
CV Star is working with JFK to have a program in language that will bridge the K-5 schools, which is important for consistency and something we will strive to obtain for all our students. So according to the data at the elementary and intermediate levels, the top areas of concern, as you heard before, center around the unstructured times on the bus and at lunch and recess. So we're looking for students to make better choices at those unstructured times. How are we going to accomplish this? This year, CVS and JFK began to integrate emotional intelligence into our PBIS systems. This integration began slowly by design as a K-5 approach using a process from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence called RULER. RULER is an acronym for recognizing emotions in self, understanding causes and consequences of emotions, labeling emotions accurately, expressing emotions appropriately, and regulating emotions effectively. The first step towards introducing Ruler to staff is to create a shared vision for a safe psychological and emotional school climate.
So PBIS is really nothing new to us here in Brewster. It's something I've been working on for, quite honestly, over a decade. But the main difference between what we do with PBIS and with Ruler is really what you see here. PBIS focuses on desired expectations. You've heard that from principals earlier. You reach a goal, you meet a task, you get rewarded for it. At JFK, we see some wonderful opportunities also. We know the kids are Cubs for the Brewster Bears, so at JFK we're the Cubs. Kids get a ball print. We announce it on the PA system. They're recognized, acknowledged, they get to walk away with a little pencil. Now that pencil can hopefully become a nice conversation piece when the teacher says it's appropriate, of course. But it helps us identify and recognize everybody's good behaviors or things that are worth recognizing. And then Ruler is a big shift. Dr. Jambor alluded to it earlier, and all of the work that he's done in the district since he began here. And Ruler's really focusing on feelings. We've got colored mood meters. And what our real focus here now is, also something you heard Mr. Clark mention before as well, are the recurring themes, or really themes in general. So each month, we too will focus on a different feeling theme. Each of the CV Star and JFK buildings really started with the staff charter. That's again the teachers and staff's feelings. 4 main points: optimism, being calm, feeling appreciated, and inspired. So those are 4 key, strongest components that we've got from both buildings, from JFK and CV Star staff. Now in September, what PBIS calls them are your kickoffs, right? Just like the beginning of any school year. How are you going to kick that off? We'll do the same thing. We'll have lessons geared around, yes, how to behave in the hallway, how to behave at recess. You go down the slide, not up the slide. Definitely don't push down the slide. Not good things happen when you're pushing down the slide. So the charters that we develop as staff will now become classroom charters. And each classroom will have their own charter. And that will be based on feelings and how the children want to be made to feel on a regular basis. We also now take both systems, and we like to use the word we infuse them. So for example, if I'm talking to the kids in a classroom during a PLC, and we talk about any good-natured act. Okay, you get a paw print for that. What's something you get a paw print for? A recognizable behavior. How does that now make you feel? I've never, ever had a student say they've had a negative feeling based on doing something in order to be a good Cub. So you see some of those connections, and those are some of the things we're going to be working on next year. Final steps for us. In September, when we come back, we all know that the end of the school year is just a flurry of activity. And you also take away a little bit from all of the good things that you're trying to recognize at the end of the year when you start a little too soon to get ready for the next one. So there's that delicate balancing act of finishing a year and then getting ready to start. But quite honestly, I think it might be all my years in administration at this point. I can't wait to start. We really just finished, but there are so many good things that we're doing in the district. We can't wait to get back to work with the kids. So some of the things are actually reviewing the code of conduct during superintendent's conference day with the staff. We'll go back over with the kids once they walk in the door, grade level assemblies, and we'll review both PBIS and the Ruler concepts, but we'll really specifically analyze the data. We'll look at those results that we've talked about here, and we're going to review them with the kids. So the kids have real life experiences and also real life experiences with analyzing data. We're going to do it with kindergarten, first and second grade. 14, 15. And lastly is reviewing the code of conduct. We tweak that, as Dr. Henning mentioned to you earlier. We do that each year. That kind of gets combined with how we want to tweak things with DASA, how we want to tweak things with the code of conduct, and how we want to also incorporate where we're going with Blue River for September.
And in terms of next steps, I'm sorry, did you have one more item?
No, John said he can go right away, but I can use some time to decompress.
In terms of next steps for the Code of Conduct Committee, one of the members who actually is being appointed this evening as assistant to the principal is C.D. Starr, located through her great research skills a model that we're going to be reviewing and paying attention to in terms of being one of the school districts that has spent a lot of time in the 17-18 school year revising their code of conduct so that it isn't based upon a zero tolerance policy or penalties for students when they don't meet expectations. Our plan then is to develop a comprehensive and differentiated plan that treats violent incidents differently from nonviolent incidents. Suspensions, whether they're in school or out of school, should be the last resort, not the first option. We'll use our multi-tiered system of supports, which is the umbrella structure for RTI and PDIS, to make sure that we develop behavioral interventions for our staff and that we also provide training for our staff so they can use those interventions. And that means recess monitors, lunch monitors, any staff member who has contact with students should be trained to use these interventions. We will develop a clinical model that combines a consent to discipline to address drug use and addiction related to related infractions, that we won't just suspend students who may be addicted and only put them in situations where they only continue that behavior. We will continue to train, as Mr. Clark mentioned, in restorative practices, integrating those into the way in which we handle student misbehavior. We've gotten a lot of traction. We train counselors and administrators last fall. Our plan is now to make sure that that's at the center of our code of conduct and the way that we address incidents with students, because we do want them to think and reflect. We do want them to consider what they did so that they then can have some wherewithal to be able to respond to things differently rather than being in the center of having to explain why they did something. We're introducing the Obeus Bullying Prevention Program, and that's been around. A number of schools use it. It looks different at the K-5 level than the secondary level. At the K-5 level, it's more of certified trainers, our certified trainers who actually go into classrooms and work with teachers and students. At the secondary level, it's more of a student ambassador-driven program. So again, using student leaders to drive, what it is that we value in terms of how we ensure that students are treating each other respectfully. We'll continue to strengthen our COPE and our RUI program. COPE is the Creating Opportunities for Personal Empowerment, which was rolled out to our secondary students. We'll continue to make sure that we emphasize that and give children an opportunity to dip back into that learning so that it does not become something that they did it and they check it off and they go on. We'll continue to review our suspension data and follow up with additional school climate surveys. The school climate survey can also be administered to intermediate level students, so that might be a recommendation that the Code of Conduct Committee suggests as a way of collecting some of that perception data. We'll also present that Code of Conduct that's revised. This is a year-long process. This is not something that's going to be available at any point next year. We'll revise what it is that we think is a good effort to reflect the research and practices of some of the districts that have a head start on revising their codes of conduct. We'll present that hopefully to the board in January. We'll offer forums to parents and communities to introduce them to the concepts of the Code of Conduct. And the principles that underline that whole process. We'll hold focus groups and assemblies for our students so that we can introduce them to the wealth of ways in which we want to communicate expectations to them and give them an opportunity to meet those. And then the hope is by the beginning of the 1920 school year, the Code of Conduct will be revised and be in use in the district. Any questions?
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll continue now with item C, action items. Beginning with the first one, we have approval of pre-registration of all students, update on the registration documents, and draft student admissions policy. And this was tabled from our last business meeting.
Yes. The re-registration task force, or residency task force met on Monday and yesterday, it seems so far so long ago. And we did take a look at the list of acceptable proofs. Ms. Harrington, who led that group, may want to approach the podium to answer any questions related to the new documents. The new documents are not new, they're actually part of the original list that was provided by the state of New York, as reviewed by the residency committee and vetted by our legal counsel. We have to put those on the list. It is part of a paragraph at the bottom of the list, is so that we don't emphasize those, but if a resident does in fact not have some of the items in category A as a renter or a homeowner, there are ancillary documents or proofs that are available. They are the last, they're not the first level of proof, but we do have to accept those if the parent is not able to produce other items that are on in those categories. In addition, we will be updating each of the residency documents with information that makes it very clear to parents and others who are registering their children that it is, they are committing a crime if they do provide false information anywhere on those documents. So that was very important, as well as if they are found to be residing in the district illegally, we will charge them tuition and expect to collect that. So that information is also on those documents. We will, the policy as well was updated, so that's also part of the new documents that we have. And again, legal counsel guided us each step of the way. We'll start the re-registration process on July 2nd. Our boardroom is already set up to make that happen. There's a parent meeting for any parent who has questions about the whole process and why we're doing it. In addition, there will be information conveyed to the parents through text message and phone to let them know that this is happening in the event they're on vacation. So we'll keep reminding parents in that fashion so that no one is missed because they may be on vacation. If parents do not comply with our request to re-register, we will make 2 attempts to contact them. First, via standard registered letter. After we don't hear from them, it's about a week, we will send a courier letter to them. If we don't hear back to them, we will send them a request for a residency hearing. If they don't respond to that, they don't either respond to the hearing request or attend the residency hearing, we will then initiate an investigation with our investigator. So that's pretty much the update from the residency task force meeting. Ms. Harrington, is there anything else that we wanted to add?
Thank you for your help. All okay to take a motion and a second and give some discussion. Mary Kay is motioning. Seconded by Ms. O'Brien. Questions or comments from the board?
Just double checking. If this becomes the, I printed it out, this becomes that application.
That's the recertification document that each parent has to complete before they come to the meeting, and the boxes below indicate in both categories, A and B, one for homeowner and one for renter. They have to bring those documents, the original documents, to the re-registration.
So this is it matches the proposal that you outlined that you're applicant on. except this one seat. Is that supposed to be there? Just matching.
Right, I know that one of the documents was, one of the older documents was not linked correctly.
Yes.
So this is the updated one?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure, 'cause it matches otherwise. Okay.
Questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 6, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, action item number 2 concerns the approval of the 2017-18 internal audit report, focus area upon revenues and accounts receivable and corrective action plan. Who's helping us with that tonight?
Ms. Harrington? Did Mr. Carlson say you would be helping?
Or the internal audit report?
Yes, we had our internal audit report and corrective action plan. It was voted on, it was discussed with our audit committee.
Yep.
Back in, I think it was June, early June. And the committee accepted it, made a corrective action plan.
Great.
The report in general was quite favorable. And they also offered some suggestions which we are already implementing.
Terrific. It's usually a positive experience. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you again, Mary Kay. And thank you to Mr. Niles. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, then all in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Action item number 3 concerns the approval of adjustments to year and fund balance reserves and budget amendments number 9 and number 10. Okay, it's a busy night.
The Finance Committee met regarding our fund balance projection.
Right.
Now, currently, we have, it's a projection. We still
Sure.
have multiple payrolls to complete for this fiscal year, which will impact that final number.
Okay.
But it was determined that we would allocate $800,000 to pay off an existing bond, and in addition to that, we have the transfer of reserves for the emergency repairs at the field renovation. So that considered, including our projected fund balance, we're looking at a decrease of about $1.2 million to our fund balance.
Okay. It's important. Very important, in fact. So we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Down back to the end, Ms. O'Brien and Ms. Masika. How are you doing today? Oh, good. Okay. Questions or comments from the board?
Just, and that reducing that still keeps us in the same range of where we need to stay as far as the required.
Absolutely. We're working with capital markets to balance that payoff, the state aid that's coming in, and also the grant that we just reissued today.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. Action item number 4 concerns the approval settlement agreement and general release with Capilino Chevrolet Incorporated pertaining to the purchase of a maintenance vehicle. Okay. On the maintenance, the infamous truck.
Yes, the truck. Well, we've agreed on the settlement amount.
Great.
And
That's perfect. That's good news, right? Oh, you're not worried about that truck anymore. Okay. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this important settlement agreement. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien and Mr. Niles. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Action item number 5 concerns the approval of required change in meal prices.
Mrs. Harrington? This is pretty standard. Every year it increases. It's driven by the federal
I really don't have much say in that matter, do we?
And Kathy mentioned it briefly.
Yes,
earlier.
I understand.
It's
subsidizing local school districts' operational costs.
Sure.
So that they need to modify.
It's a formality, I get it. Okay, so we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this change. You were better before, Ms. Masika and Mary Kay. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. Action item number 6 concerns the acceptance of a donation, BEF again, for the CV Star 5th grade trip. Sounds like fun.
That was a trip to the Museum of Natural History. It was a phenomenal trip.
Yeah.
Lots of tweets, and we thank the Brewster Education Foundation for making it possible for this to take place, which subsidized and covered the cost of transportation, admissions tickets, and a great deal of fun.
You bet. Nothing wrong with that in education. So we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this donation. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Mr. Niles, questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Action item number 7 concerns the approval of a side letter of agreement for BTA regarding the Dean of Students at Wells, the approval of an MOA with the BTA regarding teaching assistants, and that would be Ms. Culligan.
Yeah, I have 2 side letters agreements with the Brewster Teachers Association. The first one is to establish a .5 Dean of Students position for Henry H. Wells Middle School for the period of September 1st, 2018 through June 2019. This is a continuation of the position that we've had here. We just seek approval every year to continue it. And the second agreement is regarding the contract we negotiated in 2016. We verbally agreed on some language regarding teaching assistants in a prep period, and we forgot to change that language in the contract, so this MOA will change that language the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, sounds good. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this described action item. Now, Ms. O'Brien and Ms. Masika. Questions or comments from the board? All those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. Action item number 8 pertains to the approval of an agreement with BCSD for interim principal at the CV Star building. Ms. Culligan.
Yes, this is an agreement for an interim CV Star principal for the 18-19 school year. We would like to continue Ms. Teresa Cherry.
Yep. Working out pretty nicely. Okay, so we'll take a motion, please. Mary Kay, you batter up. Very good. And Ms. O'Brien, catch you next time. Ms. Masika. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. Approval of agreement, this is number 9, with the AAB for the interim principal of CV Star, Ms. Culligan.
Yes, this is an agreement with the Administrators Association of Brewster
Right.
that Teresa Cherry, while serving as the interim principal in CV Star, will not be a member of the bargaining unit.
Okay, fine, that works out. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Ms. Masika, Mr. Niles. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. And last but not least, action item number 11. And rushing things, okay. Great. Approval of contract with Robert Valdez for appointment, promotional title of Assistant Director of Technology and Network Support Operations.
Yes, there has been a realignment of duties in the technology department.
Okay.
This is not an additional position. They've actually lost a position for the 18-19 school year.
Okay.
So Bob, who was an associate network specialist, will become the assistant director, and he will oversee the network portion of the technology.
Sounds like it'll be in good hands. Okay. So we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Ms. O'Brien and Mr. Niles. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. And now, finally, last but not least, number 11, approval of the first read for policy number 311, students' rights and responsibilities, 4513, instructional material selection, 8500, food service management, charging school meals, free and reduced price meal services, 5311.3, non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district, 5311, Dignity for All Students Act, very important. And then the approval of elimination of policy 4511, textbook selection and adoption. A lot of policies.
I was hoping you'd read that, all that, since it was your last time. Thank you, Dr. Campbell. These policies have been vetted by legal counsel and reviewed and advised by our policy committee, and we put them forward.
Great. Is there any way I can make a special arrangement to keep updated on these policies? No? Oh, gee whiz. I can do that, can't I? Great. You can. You guys are full of nice ideas. I'll take a motion, please, for Ms. O'Brien and Ms. Masika. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. I'll turn your attention now, please, to the consent agenda and take a motion there also. Where are we now? Okay, Ms. Masika and Mary Kay. Questions or comments from the board concerning the consent agenda?
Steve, I'd like to abstain.
Sure, of course, I understand. Not a problem. Please tell the forum. Yes, we do. 4. Okay. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 4-0. And last but not least, entirely, are remarks, board remarks, and/or BOE committee updates.
Steve, I have a quick remark. I was looking through the NYSSBA handbook, through Westbud's handbook, and I cannot find any rules or regulations how the board may show their appreciation to the retiring president, so I put it in board remarks. There was no procedure. And I think we all chatted a little bit about it, and we know how much you value tokens and pens and knickknacks, so we decided to stay away from that.
Okay.
And we could not compete at all with any of the lovely gifts from
Amazing.
the schools. So
Amazing.
the children outdid themselves, and so we decided to take a personal note, and on your trip up one side of the mountain or down the other, maybe you and your family can find time to relax.
Well, thank you so much, Mary Kay.
That's from everyone on the board.
Thank you, Mary Kay. I appreciate it. Other questions or comments from the board? So I have one final comment, and that's a downer. I apologize. I couldn't quite bring home a winner in terms of settling the superintendent's contract on this watch. Why on this watch? Because we started it together, 7 board people and the superintendent. We did our evaluation step. We didn't do what was needed, apparently, to bring it through into contract language to be ratified by the board. And as a result, we're losing a good superintendent. For me, for my role, that's unconscionable. So it's leaving on a very bad note, and there's no two ways about it. Anything else from the board? Seeing none, public remarks and information. The floor is yours, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, ma'am. Other comments? Yes, sir. Of course.
I'm concerned that the board made a fatal decision by delaying the extension of Dr. Henning Piedmont's contract due to input from a flawed instrument. I'd like to bring to your attention some systematic problems with the BTA survey. Any kind of language in the survey that consciously or unconsciously skews respondents to a more positive or more negative response or biased. An example of an unbiased question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, rate your experience. I was shocked when I read question number 12 in the survey that included the words fear or worry of retaliation. I believe this is a biased or leading question. Having lots of responses makes for good statistical analysis. However, it gives a false sense of security when there's sample bias. Another problem I see with the survey is when it was given. The survey was given in March, just prior to the New York State Common Core exams. I can assure you, as a teacher with 26 years of experience, this is one of the most stressful times of year for a teacher. The sad reality is that public school teachers are stressed and overloaded. 50% of teachers in a recent Gallup poll reported that they feel high daily stress. The Center of Education Policy surveyed public school teachers and reported that teachers are concerned and frustrated over shifting policies and overemphasis on student testing and their lack of voice in decision-making. Teachers are leaving the profession because they're dissatisfied. The Public Insight Network reported that teachers feel overworked, overevaluated, undercompensated, underappreciated, and ill-equipped. This is a national problem. As a parent in a district and a veteran teacher who understands the challenges that public education is facing, I value the experience and wisdom that Dr. Henning Piedmont brings to the Brewster Central School District. During this time when public schools are being regulated and influenced by politicians and philanthropic capitalists, we need more than ever an experienced educator leading our district. We are fortunate today that we have that experienced educator right now with Dr. Henning Piedmont. I got a call today from a teacher, a Brewster teacher who's on vacation, and she asked me to come here tonight and to fight for Dr. Henning Piedmont. In my private conversations with the teachers in Brewster that I truly admire, I've only heard positive remarks. As a community, we need to ask ourselves, do we want to move forward and prepare our children for the future, or are we going to lament on the past and stagnate? I'm deeply disappointed that you have not extended Dr. Henning Piedmont's contract. Thank you.
Other comments, remarks?
Just have a question, Ben.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering why an agreement couldn't be reached. I know it's a broad question, but is that one that you can answer, or anyone can answer?
Anybody can help out with that? Why do you think the agreement could not be reached?
I think that would be an important piece of information just for the public to have.
It was my intention to vote for an extension. There was issues that several board members, not particularly me, that had questions with contract language. The contract, we did not get the actual contract until sometime late on Friday. And it's difficult to get things done when we work as well. So again, I will tell you, I did not, and I have no intention on not voting for an extension on Valerie's contract, or Dr. Henning Piedmont's contract. I absolutely, I will sit here and I can swear on a stack of Bibles. I was intending on a 2-year extension.
Thank you for...
Which would have been basically a 3-year, contract.
But it sounds like, and I know it's just your answer, you can't speak for everyone, but that there wasn't enough time given for everyone to review the language? Is that what that is?
That is correct. It was also my decision as well, as with Diane, to reward her with the extension as well.
Thank you for answering. Sounds like a not great reason to not offer an extension because there wasn't enough time. Well, it sounds a little, I don't know.
The extension, we had intention on doing that. We got a letter of resignation this morning. So it came as a surprise. And that's the truth.
Okay, so I'm just trying to reconcile back where we're saying there's not enough time to review the language, being that's the reason why the contract wasn't extended or the language wasn't agreed on. I don't know, that just seems like such a frivolous reason not to reach an agreement for a superintendent position. I mean, I don't really know.
I can't force someone, and I don't.
And I'm not picking on it, I'm just.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I'm trying to be frank and I'm trying to be upfront and honest. everyone makes their decision based on what they feel is right for themselves. So I'm telling you that was going to be my intention. Unfortunately, it didn't happen tonight. It could have happened the 3rd of July, the next meeting. It could have happened in August. But I can't speak for that. We received a letter of resignation this morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am.
I have to tell you that it's a very sad day. I mean, all day when we noticed it, I noticed it on the because I don't know some really. And my whole day was shot. I'm sorry. So, great. Always, restorative justice. And she basically initiated all that, and it's going on. And I would personally like to see this play.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I apologize if this comes out angry. I'm feeling a lot of anger, and it's hard for me to control that. I'm not directly to any specifically, but I want to tell this board to remember that you have a duty to do what's right for students, not to listen to a few loudmouths from the community that are feeding you false information, inaccurate data, invalid data. I'm so concerned about the direction of this school district because I've always been so proud to have my kids go here. And now I'm scared. I'm scared and angry about the registration. It's a huge waste of money and time. It sends a really bad message as to what we feel like we are here. I'm angry that there is an anonymous phone line, and we're going to have lots of people trying to catch people and call it in, and it's disgusting. I'm angry that we're losing an amazing superintendent. Some other district is going to be very lucky to have him, Valerie. And I, for one, I'm so grateful for everything that you've done for my kids. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick comment that I've been sort of listening to everyone and agreeing with a lot of what Rebecca said, what Mark said, and I think there's been a lot of talk about who certain people in the community think should get to work here or they want to work here. We should also be considering who's going to want to work for us. If our climate is what it is, who's going to want to work for us? We want the best people. Who's going to want to work here if this is the climate that is concerning? To me, it's very concerning.
I want the board to know that I reached out to you personally 3 or 4 times, and I've never had a response back. And that, to me, makes me feel a little suspicious as well. So I just want to make sure that you know, you really need to reach out to people that reach out to you and let us know that you have our best interests in mind.
Okay, I'll take a motion, please.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session. We have the teacher settlement agreement, and we have 2 other contractual items to discuss, and we will not be
Motion and second by Ms. O'Brien, all those in favor?
Thank you.